Let's go ahead and call this evening's meeting to order. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Mr. Gray? Ms. Henson? Ms. Henson? Ms. James?
Here.
Mr. Lane?
Here.
Ms. Lawless? Mr. Martin? Mr. McCord?
Here.
Mr. Myers?
Here.
Mr. Stinnett? Mr. Beard?
Present.
Mr. Blues? Ms. Crosby? Mr. Ellinger?
Here.
Ms. Feigl? And Ms. Horton.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum, so we will proceed. It is my pleasure to welcome to the podium Dr. Reverend Michael Ward, who's the pastor of the Walnut Hill Church. Dr. Ward.
Mayor Newberry and council members and neighbors, I bring you greetings from Walnut Hill Church, founded in 1785 for generations, community of prayer for our community and its leaders, and we still offer those prayers. I'm honored to be here and offer this invocation, which I invite us to begin with a moment of silence. Tonight we have gathered at the appointed place and time, a collection of citizens and their elected council. May all of us present be aware of the privilege granted us this evening to share in the people's work. May we give this meeting's agenda our full attention. May we be mindful of those whose lives are affected by the actions we take this night. May we have energy enough for the persistent problems, wisdom enough for the complex questions, humor enough for the awkward moments, courage enough for the difficult decisions. As we conduct our business this evening, may we live up to the best ideals that guide our lives individually and together. May we be quick to listen, slow to speak, and even slower to anger. May we extend to others the same respect and courtesy that we expect from them to us. And when we finish this evening's work, may we depart as colleagues, neighbors, and friends. And may we always be aware of how fortunate we are to live in this world, this country, this commonwealth, this county, and this city. So may it be for us. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Ward. We have some minutes from the August 13th meeting to be approved. Is there a motion to approve them?
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Stinnett and a second by Councilmember Henson to approve the minutes of August 13th. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. The motion carries. Let me turn the podium over now to Commissioner Marlene Helm for a short presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Newberry, members of the Urban County Council. It is with a great deal of excitement that I report to you that we have had another fantastic summer youth employment season. We had over 450 young people who were eligible to participate, to apply, and we were able to actually hire and place 233. These 233 youth aged from 14 to 24 represent every school within our community and every council district, and so we are very excited. We had 108 businesses to participate this year. That was up from last year's number of about 78, and so we are very excited. If you would let me just take a few moments to introduce three people who participated in this year's program. We think it's important for you to hear their comments about the program that you gave approval for budget-wise. First, I'd like you to hear a few brief comments from Sebastian Anderson, who was placed at the Goodwill Industries this summer. Sebastian?
Good evening. I gained a lot of experience from the Summer Youth Employment Program this year. I've understood that through my second year, I've enhanced my confidence with everyday challenges and have strengthened my various areas of everyday life. With the training classes that were provided, I've learned that 100% BEST is mandatory at all times. This program is very priceless to everything that I've learned this year. It has helped me through my school and through everyday household chores. All I wanted to say was thank you so much for the great opportunity.
Next, I'd like you to hear from Sherry Myers, who represents Clark Material Handling Company.
Good evening. I'm the Human Resource Manager for Clark Material Handling Company, and we benefited greatly from this summer youth employment program and hope that you all will see fit to vote to fund that program again next year. It's Clark's mission to build the best forklift in the world, and along with that, it's our mission to plant seeds of goodwill along the way. And one of the ways that we do that is we give back to the community in various ways, including helping to mentor our youth. And this program definitely helped us to be able to do that by building some workforce readiness skills in these youth. We had 3 youth placed at Clark, hoping to get more next year because it was so successful. We had one in our information systems department, one in our aftermarket parts, and we used one in just in an office clerical role. They were able to provide the manpower and resources to our company this year during this time that we were trying to cut costs and we didn't have any extra financial resources to hire anyone else. So we were definitely able to benefit to have the extra manpower to complete some projects. The owner of our company, S.H. Bank, was orphaned at a very young age, and he only has a 3rd grade education. Through his hard work and determination, he now is the owner of 47 worldwide companies, including he's the largest hat manufacturer in the world. He's a multi-billionaire entrepreneur with his 3rd grade education. Education and giving back to the community is one of his business cultures and business philosophies. As one of the companies that he owns, he expects us to report back to him how we give back to our community as much as he expects us to give him a financial report on how our company's doing. So this program allowed us to give back to the community in one more way. So thank you all for allowing that program to be in existence.
And finally, Paul Cable from Bluegrass Station, Department of Military Affairs.
Good evening, Mayor Newberry and members of the council. Bluegrass Station at Avon has a little bit different environment. We have 2,600 employees at Bluegrass Station, and in our division that runs and oversees Bluegrass Station, we have about 30. So we were able to invite 2 youth to our department this year, and they really fit in well. They were a lot of fun to work with. I think we learned as much as they did, and Lisa Fath, our coordinator, worked with them very closely, and so we just had a good time. But they worked hard. They worked with our managers in both administrative and maintenance branches, and we were proud to have them with us. And so we plan to participate again. We think it's an important endeavor, and we want to thank the council for voting to maintain this operation and program, and we want to keep it going as well. And this is my first year in the program, and so I'm going to try to encourage other employers at Bluegrass Station to do the same thing and participate, because we think it's important and we want to support it, and we just want to thank you again for your help in making this happen. So thank you very much.
And then finally, I'd just like to recognize the staff members from the Division of Youth Services who each summer agree to take on this additional workload task in addition to all of their other responsibilities. Maddie Morton is the kind of the leader of the pack, if you will. Priscilla Gales, Stephanie Jackson, not Maddie Morton, Sonia Combs, and Pat Sidney. So if you would just recognize their efforts, I would appreciate it, and thank you again.
Commissioner Helm, or perhaps Maddie, I know the program has evolved a good bit over the course of the last 3 years. Could you just kind of recap for us how it has grown over the course of the last 3 years in terms of students and employers both?
Over the last few years, actually, we went from employing 150 youth to this year employing 200 33. We've gone from about 83 businesses to 108. We've included an employability workshop this year in which we gave the 17 to 24-year-old youth were giving 15 hours of employability training. The 14 to 16-year-olds were giving 4 hours of employability training. And we have actually enjoyed it. Our staff has increased a little bit, maybe about 1 or 2 people, but not that much. So, but we've really enjoyed it over the years. Thank you.
Thank you. You've done an excellent job, and we appreciate all the effort that everyone in social services has put forward to make it a success. Thanks so much. Unless there's something further from the council, one other thing I need to say is it is important to recognize the fact that everyone on the council ought to share in the progress that we have seen in the Summer Youth Employment Program, because without your continued funding support through the budget over the course of the last 3 years, it would not have happened, and I'm very grateful for that. So thanks to all of you. Madam Clerk, we're to the point now where we're ready for a second reading of ordinances.
Ordinance number 1, an ordinance changing the zone from a light industrial I-1 zone to a planned neighborhood residential R3 zone for 6.93 net, 7.15 gross acres for property located at 1700 Leestown Road, a portion of, subject to provision of a landscape buffer imposed as a condition of granting the zone change, Dennis Anderson, INV 1700 LLC. Number 2, an ordinance amending subsection 1 of section 576 of the Code of Ordinances of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County Government to increase the fees as follows: rough wire inspection fee from $35 to $45 for first 10 circuits, rewire inspection fee from $35 to $45 for service change inspection, final inspection fee from $35 to $45 for service and fixtures up to 10 circuits, temporary inspection fee from $35 to $45, apartment rough wire fee from $35 to $45 for first unit, 1 building, and from $9 to $12 for each additional unit. Apartments final inspection fee from $35 to $45 for first unit and from $9 to $12 for each additional unit, and changing the term trailer service to manufactured or mobile home service and increasing the fee from $35 to $45 for inspections without state approval, all effective on September 1, 2009. Number 3, an ordinance approving and adopting a program amendment for use of home investment partnerships project funds in the 2009 consolidated plan to establish a new project, the Equestrian View Project, appropriating funds pursuant to Schedule Number 50, and authorizing the mayor to transfer unencumbered funds within the grant budget. Number 4, an ordinance amending Section 18A1 of the Code of Ordinances, creating a definition for special event permit, amending Section 18A15, providing that the holder of a local taxicab permit may request a special event permit for a specified time frame, and modify the identification scheme of one or more vehicles of its fleet, and providing that upon expiration of the permit, the local taxicab permit holder shall have 5 days to return to the original identification scheme of its fleet of vehicles. Number 5, an ordinance pursuant to Section 2126.1 of the Code of Ordinances approving the promotion and 12% pay increase for David Loney, Deputy Director of Fleet, grade 120E, due to his experience and exceptional qualifications. Number 6, an ordinance pursuant to Section 2126.1 of the Code of Ordinances approving the promotion and 23% pay increase for Kevin Bennett, Program Manager Senior, grade 120E, Division of Waste Management, due to his experience and exceptional qualifications. Number 7, an ordinance amending Section 2152 of the Code of Ordinances, creating one position of Environmental Outreach Specialist, grade 115E, in the Division of Environmental Policy. There is a motion on number 8.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to amend item number 8 under second reading ordinances to place the Division of Enterprise Solutions in the Office of the Chief Information Officer rather than the Division of Computer Services. This is not a material change and does not require a new first reading.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? I have a second by Councilmember Lane. Any discussion? All in favor of Councilmember James.
Just, Councilmember Martin, do you have any further explanation? Was it just a mistype there, or is there a restructuring happening?
It was just an error in the original writing of the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Those in favor of the motion to amend number 8, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Madam Clerk.
Number 8, an ordinance amending Section 2152 of the Code of Ordinances, creating the Division of Enterprise Solutions and creating one position of Director of Enterprise Solutions, Grade 123E, in the Office of the Chief Information Officer, and authorizing the Division of Human Resources to internally advertise for the position, appropriating funds pursuant to Schedule Number 51. Number 9, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to accept a grant from the Kentucky Department of Juvenile Justice, which grant funds are in the amount of $15,275 federal funds under the Juvenile Accountability Block Grant Program, are for programs designed to promote greater accountability in the juvenile justice system, the acceptance of which obligates the Urban County government for the expenditure of $1,697 as a local match, appropriating funds pursuant to Schedule Number 52, and authorizing the mayor to transfer unencumbered funds within the grant budget. Number 10, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to accept a grant from the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security, which grant funds are in the amount of $10,000 federal funds, are additional funds for participation in assessments of critical infrastructure in Fayette County, the acceptance of which does not obligate the Urban County government for the expenditure of funds, appropriating funds pursuant to Schedule Number 53, and authorizing the mayor to transfer unencumbered funds within the grant budget. Number 11, an ordinance amending certain of the budgets of the Lexington Fayette Urban County government to reflect current requirements for municipal expenditures and appropriating and reappropriating funds, Schedule Number 54. Number 12, an ordinance pursuant to Ordinance Number 197, 2002, adjusting the salaries of employees occupying the position of Administrative Specialist Senior, Staff Assistant Senior, Customer Service Supervisor, Administrative Specialist, Information System Specialist Senior, Microcomputer Support Specialist, Telecommunicator, Planner, Family Support Worker Senior, Laboratory Technician, Engineering Technician, Public Service Worker Senior, Skilled Trades Worker, Equipment Operator Senior, Treatment Plant Operator, and Telecommunicator Senior in various divisions after review pursuant to the Pay Equity Ordinance, effective retroactive to the dates described in each item, and appropriating funds pursuant to Budget Schedule Number 55. Number 13, an ordinance pursuant to Ordinance Number 197, 2002, adjusting the salaries of employees occupying the position of Telecommunicator Senior, Equipment Operator Senior, Public Service Supervisor Senior, and Administrative Specialist Senior in various divisions after review pursuant to the Pay Equity Ordinance, effective retroactive to the dates described in each item, and appropriating funds pursuant to Budget Schedule Number 56. Number 14, an ordinance pursuant to Ordinance Number 197, 2002, adjusting the salaries of employees occupying the position of Planner Senior, GIS Specialist, Accountant Senior, Equipment Operator Senior, and License Inspector in various divisions after review pursuant to the Pay Equity Ordinance, effective retroactive to the dates described in each item, and appropriating funds pursuant to Budget Schedule Number 57. Number 15, an ordinance amending Sections 1115, 1118, 1120, 1121, and 1129 of the Code of Ordinances, Lexington Fayette Urban County Government, to provide the Commissioner of Health, a health officer, and officer of the day the authority to issue and enforce orders, and amending Section 1115 of the Code of Ordinances, Lexington Fayette Urban County Government, to provide the Division of Police the authority to aid any member of the Health Department regarding enforcement.
Thank you very much. That completes the reading of the ordinances entitled to second reading. Is there a motion to approve those ordinances?
Move approval. Second.
Okay. Councilmember Stinnett has moved approval. Councilmember Gordon has seconded that motion. Any discussion? See none, so we'll proceed to vote. Those in favor of approving those ordinances, please indicate by voting aye electronically. Those opposed, vote nay electronically. And Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Ms. Henson?
Yes.
Ms. James? Yes. Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Ms. Lawless?
Yes on all but 5 and 6, and no on 5 and 6. As I've asked for information and haven't got it. Thank you.
That is noted. Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCord?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Stinnett? Mr. Beard?
Aye.
Ms. Crosby? Mr. Ellinger?
Yes.
Ms. Feigl?
Aye.
Ms. Gordon?
Aye.
Thank you. Those ordinances are approved. We're now ready for ordinances entitled to first reading. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 16, an ordinance creating Section 529.3 of the Code of Ordinances, Lexington Fayette Urban County Government, to establish additional fees to be payable to the Director of the Division of Building Inspection for work commenced before the issuance of certain of the necessary permits, certificates, letters, or other documents required by Chapter 5 of the Code of Ordinances, with the amount of such fees established as being additional and equal to the amount of the original relevant fee, but not less than $500 for Sections 529.1 through 9, 14, 15, Section 529.1, Section 532, and Section 567 of the Code of Ordinances, and as being additional and equal to the amount of the original relevant fee for Sections 529.10, 11, 12, 13, 16, and 17 of the Code of Ordinances, all effective on October 1, 2009. Number 17, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to accept a donation of $250 from Columbia Gas for future fire prevention programs and appropriating funds pursuant to Schedule Number 58. Number 18, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to accept a grant from the Kentucky Justice and Public Safety Cabinet, which grant funds are in the amount of $25,000 federal funds, are additional funds for the ticketing aggressive cars and trucks program, the acceptance of which obligates the Urban County government for the expenditure of $6,250 as a local match, appropriating funds pursuant to Schedule Number 59, and authorizing the mayor to transfer unencumbered funds within the grant budget. Number 19, an ordinance amending Section 2252 of the Code of Ordinances, creating one temporary position of Administrative Specialist Principal, Grade 114E, and 5 temporary positions of Administrative Specialist, Grade 110N, all ending 1 year from the date of passage of this ordinance within the Division of Water Quality, and appropriating funds pursuant to Schedule Number 60. Number 20, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to accept a grant from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, which grant funds are in the amount of $13,572 federal funds, are for a juvenile fire setter program and the purchase of a fire extinguishers trainer's package, the acceptance of which obligates the Urban County government for the expenditure of $3,393 as a local match, appropriating funds pursuant to Schedule Number 61, and authorizing and directing the mayor to transfer unencumbered funds within the grant budget. Number 21, an ordinance amending certain of the budgets of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County government to reflect current requirements for municipal expenditures and appropriating and reappropriating funds, Schedule Number 62. Number 22, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute change order number 2 to the contract with Wilbur Smith and Associates for the Urban County Government Wayfinding Program to extend the existing contract for the completion of construction drawings at a cost not to exceed $140,742.52 and appropriating funds pursuant to Schedule Number 64. Number 23, an ordinance amending certain of the budgets of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County government to reflect current requirements for funds in the amount of $875 from Neighborhood Development Funds for the Division of Police for Police Activities League and appropriating and reappropriating funds, Schedule Number 65. Number 24, an ordinance amending certain of the budgets of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County government to reflect current requirements for funds in the amount of $390 in the Division of Traffic Engineering from the Council Capital Funds for culvert signage to be installed by the Division of Water Quality in the 11th Council District, and appropriating and reappropriating funds, Schedule Number 67.
Excuse me, Mayor. I would like to speak to number 25, and then I'm going to make a motion.
All right.
Thank you. I've been, for the audience out there and the council members, this is the issue of the refuse collection rollback of 10%. I've been doing a lot of digging and reading numbers and reading documents, and I need a life, but that being said, what I found is that we have a little under $25 million in reserve. The 04 net was net profit or net gain over collections was about $1.4 million. The 09 projected numbers, because they're not complete yet, show it as either flat or maybe somewhat of a loss. So we're planning to buy 29 trucks at a very conservative estimate of $270,000 each this year, because we have not replaced our trucks for the last 3 or 4 years for several reasons, one of which the old trucks don't work with the new recycling system, and the new trucks don't work with the old recycling system. So we'll catch 22 there. We have bald tires. A lot of them are in very bad shape. So that's $7,830,000 out of that reserve that will be spent. We also are projecting $4 million pretty immediately in equipment for our old recycling center so that it can take some of the duct tape and Band-Aids and paper clips out of there so it can be more efficiently run. And they do a great job out there, but it's very old equipment. If we lower this $2 a month, and I know times are rough, and nobody, especially people in politics, want to vote down a tax reduction or increase taxes. I'm the last person in the world. Might surprise some people, but I'm pretty fiscally conservative, and I've lived my life that way. If we reduce that, we will decrease our revenue by $3.8 million. We're also talking about adding 56 new hires, which we need. And there are certain areas in this city, and many of them are in the 3rd District, who aren't getting the needed services. We have one Herbie enforcement officer for the entire county. We could use one just for the 3rd District. And she's wonderful. Hats off to Officer Turley. I wish we had 10 of her. There's only one truck that will pick up mattresses because of OSHA regulations, because of the bed bug problem. Now, I know that in some districts that's not an issue, but I know in several districts it's a big issue. So we have a problem. And certainly there are some neighborhoods that could use twice a week collection. I personally could go every 2 weeks. But there are a lot of areas where once a week pickup has caused even greater stress on the quality of life in those neighborhoods. I don't understand, even if everything goes really, really well and all the projected things happen that the mayor and the administration propose, I don't understand why we would roll back taxes to the amount of $25 a year when we're also looking at going to a fee-based. Now, the people that will be paying more with fee-based charges their taxes or their fee will go up, because if it's on a percentage of your property value, people with very expensive houses will pay the same fee as people with a house of $150,000. So we're giving them $24 a year back. But if it goes to fee-based, their fees are obviously going to have to go up. That's not rocket science. So we'd spend down $2.5, maybe more $1 million a year of our reserve after already bringing it down from 25 to about 11 million. And then we're planning to build a new recycling center and bond it. Now, I don't know any business person that would say, you know what, we've saved a lot of money, so we're going to lower the cost of our product and take a loss until we use up our revenue, our capital, and then we're going to go to the bank and ask them to give us a loan to build a new building. Now, it just doesn't make good business common sense to me to do that. So, for that reason, and I did mention the 09 being flat or a loss projected, and net revenues over cost. So for that reason, I'm going to make a motion that on number 25, that it be amended to stay the same for refuse collection, .1590, instead of the reduction to .1431. So
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lawless and a second by Councilmember James to amend item number 25. Any discussion?
Mayor, could you restate the motion again, please?
Yes. Well, my understanding is the motion is to restore the garbage tax portion to the original level, and where it is about two-thirds of the way down, where you see the .1431 for refuse collection, that should be 0.1590, correct?
Correct. Thank you.
So that's the motion. Vice Mayor Gray.
Mayor, before we begin debate, if we could keep the 5-minute timer going
Thank
for
you.
this discussion. Thank you.
Mine's really a question. I'd like to understand the numbers. Councilmember Lawless indicated that there is a projected surplus in fiscal '09 of something on the order of 1.4 million.
That was '08. The
08.
projected for '09 is it's flat or maybe lost
Okay.
some.
And so this rollback would represent diminishing revenues by 3.8 million, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then if we don't have, if our revenues don't increase or they stay flat, then that means in business terms we would have a loss of $3.8 million next year. Can somebody,
Well, there's a issue that we're going to be incredibly more efficient this year and save a lot of money. So given, let's say we save 1.4 million, we would still be 2.5 million down.
that's the way that I read the math, but maybe somebody else can, Mr. O'Meara?
The numbers that you're referring to were in the handout that was presented, I don't remember the date, 2-3 weeks ago in the presentation on work session on the 18th. And the looking at each individual year is what we're talking, what Councilmember Lawless is talking about, as well as below that is the total fund balance. And the presentation was talking about accelerating the spending out of fund balance to recoup for the purchase of trucks that had been delayed in the past. And then there were other assumptions about decreasing the operating cost and increasing the recycling revenue. So there was a combination of assumptions going forward that included the decrease in the property tax, increase in recycling revenue, decrease in operating expenses. I've forgotten something. But anyway, there were several assumptions going into the projections that they presented.
So as a percentage, how much of an operating reduction is contemplated? As a percentage of total cost, how much as a percentage are total revenue or total costs predicted to be dialed down or reduced? To offset a $3.8 million decline in revenue, there's got to be, what that represents, 3.8 million is what percentage of X? Total operating costs. Mr. Taylor, would you?
Total operating cost is, with capital, is varying between 19.8 million to up in the 40 million, depending on the purchase of the vehicle replacement.
The capital, that wouldn't be an operating cost, so that's a capital cost, so that wouldn't be an operating cost, would it? So what's the operational cost? Basically, these funds translate into operating costs.
And the personnel is about
That's fine,
11.3. The operating is at 8.6 and projected to go down into the 6.5 range.
So the total is what?
From about 20 million to about 18 million.
So 3.8 million represents almost 20% of operating cost reduction then.
And at the same time, there's movement on the revenue side, because we have assumptions of property tax values as well as recycling revenue. So it's indicated here in the presentation that was made.
Okay. So my question has to do with how much of a reduction in operating costs is anticipated in order to offset this reduction in revenue. I think these are really good questions, and they are coming at a very awkward time, it seems like, to me.
Let's try again. You want a percentage? I need to go do that, but I can, do you have a copy of the presentation that we made?
Actually, the numbers that we have been told, or that I just heard Councilmember Lawless suggest, is that we have had an operating surplus. In business language, that would be a profit of $1.4 million last year. This year, we're projecting to be flat. In other words, no surplus, right?
I believe you have to look at the fact that we are spending on capital out of cash. So the movement in a single year is impacted by the capital outlay in that year.
Okay, so how much is, with a $3.8 million decline in revenues, what will be the effect going forward? That's a pretty substantial amount out of a $20 million, $4 million is 20% of $20 million. That's a pretty significant decline in revenue.
Right. The first year it's going to be difficult because the revenue will go down, but the recycling revenue will go up. Will start to go up significantly. What we did wasn't just take a snapshot for 1 year. We projected a 5-year model, and we did make assumptions. The assumptions that we made in the first year were that growth would be pretty limited. So the revenue will go down more because the growth will be limited than because necessarily that dollar value from the tax rate will drop all of that. Part of that is the fact that property values are not anticipated to grow very much next year. So we assumed a very conservative 1.6% growth rate next year, or the fiscal year 2010. So we thought that was fairly conservative. We certainly would drop the tax rate, and that would drop the amount of money that we take in as revenue on property tax. But we are looking at other opportunities, the dumpster fees, the recycling revenue. Those things can offset, as well as improvements in personnel efficiency. I'm not sure I'm answering your question. I'm sorry.
Now, I'd just like to see an income and expense statement and that I can translate, ordinary, the way that I'm accustomed to. And I'm not, it's very difficult to make a decision like this when so much of the information is based on projections, and we are cutting off the income stream, basically, or we're cutting my interpretation is that we're reducing the income stream by 20%.
Only one income stream. We're actually going to increase other income streams, which particularly would be recycling revenue. That would be one of the big income streams that would go up significantly.
Okay.
And by the end of fiscal year 2010, we'll start to recoup that money. So it's I guess, the assumptions that we make going forward, and I'm not sure that you got that particular copy, but we assumed that recycling revenue was going to increase significantly after fiscal year 2010 because the investment that we're making in the current MRF, $3.8 million, will allow us to triple the capacity in that MRF.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
We have a lot of opportunity out there. There's a lot of material that we do not capture today that we could. So that is a number one reason that we feel confident that we will increase revenue over time.
To offset the $3.8 million?
Yes.
That's going to happen?
That, as well as efficiency improvements. Right now, as you know, we have different types of trucks, and we've talked about this, so I certainly don't want to repeat something that you don't want to hear, but the trucks that we use today are several different types. They're specialized vehicles, and most of those trucks use two people. You have a person driving and a person on the back. In the future, the trucks we have will be automated. That alone will reduce the need for personnel on the back of the truck and will also reduce a significant area would be injuries. Right now we have a lot of injuries, frankly, and that's an expense that we expect to go down significantly, as well as keep our employees safer and longer term.
I had the opportunity to take a tour this week with you, with James Carter,
Yes.
with Kevin, with Kelvin, of the center. It's very impressive. It also impressed me of how extraordinarily limited the capacity is.
That's right.
There is no capacity. That place is struggling today. So capital for reinvestment is a very big deal. And that's what I think Councilmember Lawless was talking about.
Right.
So my difficulty with voting on this is not having adequate understanding of the full dimension of the numbers, of the declining revenues that are going to occur as a result of this change, and the projected revenues that are based on the hypothetical of getting into a new facility. That's not going to happen overnight. That new equipment's going to be a whole year coming.
Right. Well, we
At
do have
least a year.
projections up to 2015, and they're projections and they are based on assumptions. And I can go over the assumptions and talk about the numbers and where they came from. But they're projections.
I know we're at the 11th hour and 30 and 50 minutes on this, and I know how council members are, and I know how an audience is. They don't like to sit through a lot of this kind of thing. But I think it's our responsibility to really carefully examine these numbers and not jump precipitously. Thank you.
Councilmember Lawless. And Madam Clerk, can you start the timer, please?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Vice Mayor, for your questions. We have a goal of being trash-free by 2020. The 2040 destination talked about a green community. This is the wrong time and the wrong tax. And if we do realize those savings with the efficiencies, then, boy, won't it be great to roll back that tax 20% next year? But to do it on assumptions and guesses and maybes and whatnots, and the equipment and everything in place, it's going to take months and months to get all this in place, to me is financially irresponsible. That's my opinion. I'm not saying anybody is. I'm saying that's my opinion. I would urge we can always next year lower it by 20%, and I will be the first one dancing the jig to do that. But I would urge the council members to not spend our money, not cut our revenue until we realize those savings that are maybe kind of assumptions, and they may be very well based, but we don't have them in our pocket. And in this economy, we have seen too many times people get in horrible financial trouble by spending money they hope they're going to get. Thank you.
Councilmember Beard.
Thank you, Mayor. I hate to do this to you, Commissioner Taylor, but if you might. I'm a little confused about the numbers, as are several of us. If, in fact, we, and I guess this is true and accurate, that we lost money preliminarily this year?
If you're saying what we spent and what we took in were a little bit offset, I mean, they weren't flat, but the projected this year is that the total revenue was slightly below what we spent.
Okay.
But we spent money on equipment and capital this year. And we spent money on temporary labor this year,
Okay.
those kinds of
So,
things.
well, that was where I was headed, and that was, if in fact we're trying to increase efficiency, why are we hiring 56 people? And I assume that you backfilled those people with temps?
Not all of them. We have that many vacancies, but we're not necessarily going to fill all those vacancies. We're going to, right now, we have a very high vacancy rate in our drivers, our equipment operators, seniors, and those are the positions that we are trying to fill aggressively. We do need some help, public service worker. We have a number of openings there, but we're choosing not to fill those openings because we anticipate in the future that we will not need 2 people on a truck. So I think by the end of the year, we'll be able to drop the total number of vacancies, and we won't need to fill all of them.
Okay, and then secondly, the new trucks that we're going to purchase, are we purchasing them, or are we going to bond them?
Purchase.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lane.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for you, too. Out of the last 10 years, has solid waste operations actually lost money, or has it always operated at a surplus?
Double checking myself. It appears that we've always had some surplus.
If you get the automated pickup trucks you're talking about, how will that increase the operational efficiency for the department? Could you describe that a little bit more fully? I mean, will it actually save money?
Well, one way I've mentioned already would be labor, because the truck uses an automatic arm to pick up material, and the truck will also allow us to put glass. And as you all have watched people pick up the recycle, somebody has to get out of the truck, or we have to have another person on the truck to pick up the glass. And in some areas of town, we have to use a second truck to come and get the glass. So you're using 2 trucks to come, one to get the rosium, one to get the glass. And all of that happens because we have vehicles that are designed to specifically pick up a certain type of waste. Either they pick up trash, or they pick up recycle, or they pick up glass. And we have limited numbers of those trucks. So depending on what people put out on the curb on a particular day, you may have to send a couple of trucks to one location. So those trucks will be automated, reduce labor, reduce injury, and will allow us to pick up the glass in one trip. So it'll eliminate quite a few trips and a lot of miles in gas. Those trucks get about 2.7 miles to the gallon. So every mile we can save is money saved. And
Can you can pick up both recycled materials and non-recyclable materials have to go to the landfill in one truck?
you can use the same truck to service any of the containers. Now, you'll either be picking up waste or you'll pick up recycle. You won't throw them into the same truck because they'll have different destinations, but the same identical vehicle can be used to pick up any of those materials.
All right, now, you're currently, I don't know if you have this on order, but the equipment, Councilmember Laws referred to the new recycling equipment, and how will that save money, and how will that increase the efficiency of our operations for that?
Well, the new recycling equipment that we're going to put in the Thompson Road MRF will allow us, first off, I mentioned already, allow us to put the glass in that stream, and it will reduce the amount of labor that it takes us to handle the material. Right now, it takes us 30 to 32 people a day to operate that line, and they operate it for an 8-hour or to 10-hour shift, depending on how much material we have. With the new line and the rates, we'll be able to do that with about 22 people in about 4 or 5 hours. The same volume that takes us to run in 8 or 10 hours, we'll be able to run in about 4. So it'll definitely reduce the labor cost to handle it. Another thing that it'll include is a much better eddy current separator. Right now, based on the data that we collected from our waste stream characterization study, about 14% of the material that goes into the MRF is not recycled. It's not necessarily because it isn't recyclable, it's because we can't collect it off of the equipment that we have. So we have about 14% of that stream that we lose, at least some portion of that, and based on the data that we have, it's probably close to 10%. So we're losing paper, we're losing aluminum, and we're losing materials that we could collect and market. So the new line will allow us to reduce labor costs. It'll significantly increase our throughput. It'll allow us to collect materials that we previously have not collected. We also anticipate ability to separate out some streams a little more effectively and get a higher price, particularly for paper. You get better price depending on what you're able to sort out. And then what it does is opens the door for us to be able to bring in more material. Right now, we're really tentative about recruiting recyclers because the more we bring in, the less room. And as Vice Mayor Gray said, it's busting the walls right now. We have enough material in there to keep the place running much longer than we do.
Well, I noticed my time is running down, and I think, I guess my last question is, you study this intensely, and you're an expert in solid waste and recycling. I mean, I reviewed your numbers. I think they're accurate, but I'd like to hear you say that. Do you feel that your estimates and projections are pretty reliable? I mean, no projection can be 100% exact, but you feel very confident about it, and would you encourage the council to go ahead and vote to take the 10% decrease in the tax?
Well, I can deliver these numbers, and I'm confident that we can do that. We have everything in place to be very successful over the next 5 years. We have the equipment, we have the people, we're filling the vacancies that we need. We're adding people, for example, people to help us market materials that we've never had in the past. And I'm very comfortable with a projection that asks for a 10% improvement in 1 year. That's something I'm comfortable with.
Well, my time has expired, and in courtesy to my other council members, I will pass the gavel back to you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stinnett.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, we don't have to remind each other that our whole budget, the whole budget that we operate our city on, is based on assumptions. No one in here has a crystal ball. No one in here can say we're going to have this amount of property tax or this amount of revenue today, tomorrow. We don't know. That's the whole point is, well, what we do know is, and Commissioner, you passed out the numbers a week ago, Tuesday, at the Budget and Finance meeting. Everyone should have got a copy, but I'll be glad to pass one out tonight if you need one. The assumptions that you made do not indicate a $3.8 million deficit in property tax revenue. It's actually $3.4 million is the real number. But yet net revenues are only down $1.5 million. At the bottom line, we all look at the bottom line, they're only down $1.5 million. That's because we have a $24 million savings account that you all, I'll use your word, savings account now, or surplus, that we can take from. And we're going to drain that $24 million over the next 5 years. Is that the anticipated goal?
Yes, a lot of that would go for equipment, equipment and replacing equipment, particularly vehicles. That's the number one expenditure.
And looking back over the last 10 years, we've had an average of a $2 million, $2 to $3 million increase every year in this fund in revenue. $2 to $3 million over the last 10 years since 1998. And in the last 3 years, we've added close to $11 million to the surplus or savings account. $11 million last 3 years. You know, $25 is not a lot of money to some people, but I can tell you it's a heck of a lot if you go ask for it. We're giving it back to people. We're just not taking it from them. That's the bottom line every year because we don't need it. If the same people that are running our system say they can do it with less money, then the council's only two jobs is to pass laws or ordinances or regulate taxes. And in order to become more efficient, if they can do it on less money, it's our duty to pass that and give the citizens back $25 a year. May not be a lot to some of you in this room, but I can tell you it's a lot to our families who have to buy school supplies and other things to support their family, especially during this time. So, Commissioner, thank you for your projections and assumptions, and I appreciate you standing behind them like you did a week ago Tuesday, tonight, and Mr. O'Mara, because that's all we have to go on. You're the ones that run the system. That's who we have to put our faith in, and it's a good projection. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember McCord.
Thank you, and this may be to Mr. O'Mara or Commissioner Taylor. Just one quick question. Has this division seen any type of budget reduction in the last couple of years? Have they taken any kind of budget cut in the last couple of years?
I haven't been here a couple of years. I know we haven't taken a cut since I've been here.
Right. And the answer is no. And that's a question I knew the answer to begin with, where we've asked divisions of government across this government to cut themselves 10% last year, 10% this year. We looked at 15%, cuts across the board in every division of government. This is a division of government that hasn't doesn't take a cut, hasn't had a cut. And to come in here and to basically say, we feel like we can run this more efficiently, that we're taking in more than is needed, that the numbers bear that out, again, Councilmember Stinnett, we build everything upon assumptions, but in this case, we are looking at educated assumptions, and you're looking at multiple sources of revenue. And again, something you said earlier, Commissioner, that I think bears repeating. We haven't even turned the spigot on because we can't run this at a higher efficiency. And again, I have seen a couple things just in the last 2 weeks to where there may not be a need to buy a facility, but actually people that would take this to another facility. And those are the types of things, again, that I believe we can do this more efficiently, that citizens are asking us as a government to run more efficiently and give more of their money back from the federal, the state, to us. And here's a situation where we're trying to do that, and I have to stay with the way this motion is written and would have to vote against Councilmember Lawless's motion tonight. But thank you.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the financial discussion of my colleagues and Mr. Lane's discussion, and Commissioner Cheryl Taylor and Commissioner O'Mara. Time and time again, we've been up here, and Commissioner Taylor has come, and I'm just so very impressed that we have someone of this quality in both these positions and both these folks. And so, there comes a time when we really have to rely on the expertise of the people we have. If we trust their expertise, we trust their judgment, their good intentions, and there, as Councilmember McCord said, the assumptions are educated assumptions. These aren't just pulled out of the thin air. Beyond that, if it's difficult to sit on $25 million and keep taxes high. It's just a lot of money, and in these kind of financial times, I think that it's appropriate to dial it back a bit. We can always dial it up again next year if it turns out that these assumptions aren't correct. But I think I'm going to unfortunately have to oppose. I'm sorry. We can't dial it back up. Well,
within limits.
We can not do the next 10%. But in any event, I'm going to have to not support the motion this time, though. But thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Myers.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Taylor, can you speak back to when you talked about, as Councilman McCord said, when we turn the spigot on the MRF, once we do the things that you're talking about doing to gain the efficiencies, then you said that we could process the same amount of recyclables that we're doing in 8 hours in 4 hours or 5 hours.
Yeah, that's rounded off, but essentially we're going to go from an operation that only processes 8 tons an hour to one that processes 23. So we're almost tripling the rate that we can run through. So if you were running a 12-hour operation, essentially you could operate and run the same throughput in about a third of that time. So our goal then would be not to just have idle time and run it 4 hours and shut down. Our goal would be to fill that back up.
Absolutely.
Now, in a business strategy, in manufacturing, your first option is a no capital option. I mean, the thing that you would do in industry typically is you would run all night. Now, the problem we have with that particular facility, as you know, is we are right up against a residential neighborhood, so we have noise issues. And secondarily, if we tried to run all night, we have nowhere to put the stuff. I mean, we are piled to the gills with materials out there, and we're getting more and more people participating. You know, the Waste Buster program, for example, has nearly 200 members now. Those are voluntary members, the commercial members that are recycling that don't have to do that. We're getting a lot of material from operations, farm operations. Different groups of people are bringing their materials into that center. Plus, we have a fairly high usage of Rosie's. Going to the 1 day a week pickup, really what that did was people began to take materials out of their Herbie and put them in the Rosie.
Right.
So we still get 2 pickups a week, but you're recycling half of what you're putting out there approximately. So we have a lot of material coming in that even 5 years ago we didn't have. And we know, based on what we're seeing, that the opportunity for us to take in more material throughout Fayette County is significantly higher First, by getting people to stop putting it in the Herbie, residential, and second, because industrial and commercial have an enormous amount of material that they currently could recycle with us but don't. Another option we have for growth in the future, we did not assume that in this model, but regionally, our neighbors, there are 17 counties in the Bluegrass Area Development District, and all of them are attempting to recycle in one way or another. But even our next door neighbors, for example, in Jessamine County, don't have door-to-door pickup. So we have an opportunity, if we can create a center that would allow them to economically service their citizens, we may be able to provide a service regionally, which again would give us an opportunity to increase revenue. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at.
So it's clear that our assumptions are conservative. And
I think you can't guarantee, I didn't go so far on the limits to guarantee that neighbors would want to bring materials to this county. That's a totally separate conversation. But what we did assume was that we would grow our inside Fayette County material stream into that center significantly over the next 5 years, and that in turn would generate revenue. Now, recycling markets obviously are up and down, somewhat volatile. This year we had a pretty low year, but we still made almost $1.6 million, and that's with pretty limited capacity. Last year it was 2.2. One encouraging thing, though, is most of those markets are trending back upward at this point, and a lot of places are finding uses for materials that previously they had no use for. If you've been in, say, a green build home, countertops made out of bottles and glass that have been resurfaced, aluminum. There's a lot of materials used in building today that weren't even available 2 or 3 years ago. So we're hopeful that there will be new markets and new uses for materials, and that we're going to be good enough to be able to sort those streams and sell those streams for a new use.
Okay, I only have 46 seconds left. So I want to say that, when we talk about getting to the point where we can do the fee-based collection, that's another opportunity for people to have a lower rate, because then they'll be incentivized to recycle, which is going to make more money for the city on top of that. So I'm going to vote against this motion. It's clear to me that we're moving in the right direction to do the things that you're trying to do here, and I'll stop now because my time's up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Martin, this is your second opportunity to speak on this particular issue.
I appreciate that, Mayor. I'm going to yield my time to Councilmember Gordon, actually, because I know, because I just want the folks at home to understand the nature of the limitation. We can increase it, and if we cut this down and it comes out that our projections are incorrect, we can take it back. But would you mind sort of explaining what the limitation on that uptake is?
Well, and does this count, Mayor?
Against Councilmember Martin.
I'm not going to use this as my time to speak. Okay, thank you. My only point that I was talking to Councilmember Martin about was House Bill 44 and the limitations it places on us with taxes. So it is not necessarily true that we could automatically raise it back up 10% if we don't realize the savings. We would have to go to the people.
I'll jump in then and use the rest of my time to clarify. We can bring it back up, but the limitation is 4% per year. So in a 3-year period, we could actually bring it back to 12%. Given that we're sitting on a $25 million surplus, I don't think it's probably going to put us in a bind, but I just wanted folks to understand that what our ability, but we would be limited to 4% uptake per year. Is that fairly accurate? Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Henson.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner, I know your main focus has been on recycling, and I've said several times, would we have money available to take care of the things that Councilmember Lawless mentioned, as far as the mattresses, the large items that are left on the curbs, and it's, I just don't see it as being rocket science to be able to get these items off the curbs. We can educate, we can try to limit it, but I know in the UK area, if it sits there long enough, they'll set it on fire. But in District 11, I don't think that's happening a whole lot. But I do see in the apartment communities, I see a lot of large items on the curbs, and I just want some kind of assurance that those kinds of things are going to be taken care of.
Well, we have a program now, and I know that in a couple of areas of the city, that's not perceived to be enough. We have stepped up our cycles through the neighborhoods and attempted to do it, particularly in a couple areas of the city where we have a lot of apartment buildings. One thing, though, that I think is going to help that quite a bit is we're going to have to redo our whole enforcement strategy. I think there is certainly a cost to have to go through a neighborhood 3 times as often as another one, and that fundamentally the owner of the facility that puts the material on the curb needs to bear some of the brunt of that cost. So the other thing that we're looking at in parallel with the program we have today and trying to improve that program, perhaps we need a second mattress truck, for example, but in addition to that, we're looking at an opportunity to enforce more effectively and increase fines. We do have a very limited ability, one person, and essentially you have to violate, set out 3 times in a row, and by the time we actually can enforce, we're back to pick it up anyway. So our hands are kind of tied on that. So we're looking at opportunities to change the enforcement strategy. We're in the process of advertising and hiring 2 more enforcement specialists for waste. And we are looking at opportunities to increase the effective use of that truck so that we can make sure we're prompt when people put things out, that we're there to pick it up and get it out of the way. So, but we're open to, improvement suggestions in any area. I know that it's a challenge in some areas. So
I appreciate that. Because I know I ride through my district regularly and call 311 myself. We have a clear unit officer. She does the same thing. And I just think that is so unnecessary that we should be doing that. Not that I don't mind, but I find it very frustrating that, we have a solid waste department and I'm the one calling it in. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Gray, this is your second opportunity to speak to this issue.
Thank you, Mayor. I respect Councilmember Lawless's motion and the intentions of it. However, I'm not going to support the motion. I guess I'm just a little slow and I don't understand the numbers. I don't think it'll do much good to support the motion at this point because it's more than likely that this is going to go to a second reading. Between now and then, I want to understand the numbers, though. This afternoon, just before I came here, I ran into a fella at a meeting of disabled American veterans who showed me he had a plastic bag, and inside the plastic bag was his car mirror. It was a broken car mirror. And he said, this afternoon, I ran into an empty Herbie in the street, and I had a choice of either hitting the Herbie or hitting the car that was coming in the other direction. I chose the Herbie, and it broke off my mirror. And he said he called Jackie Robinson, who's the superintendent, to tell Jackie, and Jackie said, well, I'm sorry, Danny, but we can't do anything about that. And I was sympathetic. I heard the story. I said, well, Danny, I'll talk to the mayor, I'll talk to Commissioner Taylor. It's unlikely that we can do anything, but the context of this is very similar to what Councilmember Henson was just saying. Are we doing all we can with the resources we have to execute the work? And none of us, of course, want to have the burden of being accused later that this was politically motivated. So between now and the second read, I really want to understand the numbers. I really want to understand those projections. It wasn't but a couple of months ago, I think, that Councilmember Feigl actually asked the question, which is a pretty good question, should we be in this business? Should we be in the recycle business? We know that Bluegrass Ad and our contiguous counties are doing it. I know that the guys out here, James Carter and his team, are doing a great job. But it does beg the question, if we can roll it back 10%, can we roll it back 40%? What's the real number? So, I think we're asking some of the questions, but not all of the questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioner. I have two what might be quick questions. In your estimation, what would be the harm in waiting till next year to do this when we have more of the data? Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, from an operational standpoint, it wouldn't be harmful. I think we're going to go about our business of delivering a better service at a lower cost no matter what happens here tonight. We're going to do the same things, and we're going to go after aggressively these improved targets. We want to do more with recycling. We want to be more efficient with our vehicles. We can do more with what we have, and we're going to go after that regardless of what happens. I think probably sitting on the council, maybe the harm is if people perceive that they are paying more for the service than they're getting, that could be damaging from the way the public views our waste department. But it is our intention and our goal to deliver the best value, the best quality service we can at the best cost for the customers. That's our approach.
And what sort of response did you get from our Division of Budgeting about this?
Well, I guess the budgeting group more or less just gave us data. I mean, we had to work with budget. Again, I haven't been here just in my second budget season, but the budgeting group gave us historical data and worked with us on that. We did talk with them about assumptions and projections, and we did adopt the Division of Budget's assumptions on growth over the next 5 or 6 years, 6 years. And so we tried to draw on the data that they gave us so that we were as close to apples and apples as we could get. So they pretty much didn't give us a judgment about it as much as they provided us data and some of the assumptions that we used going forward. I'm not sure that answers your question, but
it does. Well, I'm probably going to support your motion. It seems to me that if I were in a bank or a nonprofit and I had a board that had this many questions and concerns, I would want to slow down a little and get the numbers. So thank you, Commissioner.
Councilmember Beard.
Sitting here listening to what we're all struggling with, in the future, would this not be the best time, not now, but would not the budget cycle be the best time to be trying to make these decisions as opposed to the 11th hour and 58th minute? And I'll throw that at Commissioner O'Mara.
Thanks. It is one approach. I would have to say, after surviving my first budget season, that we had plenty on our plate going into it, and if I had it to do over and do the best job possible, I may have entertained it at that time. Our plate was full this year.
Let me.
It's always full, I understand.
Let me add one element to that. The only time during the year that we can change our property tax rates is now. And part of the difficulty earlier in the year, particularly back in February and March when the budget was being pulled together on our end, was the absence of satisfactory data to make these kinds of judgment calls. We worked on that pretty aggressively in June and July, so we would have reliable data to bring to you in August when we had to adjust our property tax rates, but that's the reason for being here now as opposed to the...
I'm just, Mayor, saying that it seems like not everybody understands the numbers, and this type of venue to try to vet the numbers, I don't think is healthy, for one thing, and that somewhere along the line we need to get in the loop a little earlier and get satisfied on the numbers. Now, that whether that's during the budget cycle or whether that's during the phase of the budget cycle when the links are operating, or whether that's sometime in August. Sitting here, whether it be the work session Tuesday or sitting here at 8:15 in the evening on Thursday it makes it kind of tight to make a clean decision.
Councilmember McCord.
Thank you, Mayor, and I know this is my second time. Just a real quick question. Commissioner Taylor, just for clarification, because sometimes sitting out in the audience it can seem one way, the numbers that we all received that came to Budget and Finance were delivered to Budget and Finance 9 days ago, 10 days ago. So every council members, that committee had these numbers to look at for basically the last week and a half. So, it's one of those things where we may not have had an opportunity to study the numbers, or we may have been busy with other things, but these numbers were made available to us last Tuesday, correct?
The Budget and Finance Committee meeting, yes.
Okay. That's what I thought. So when we talk about not having the numbers, just recognize that the administration brought these things forward on the 25th, that it's our responsibility to dig into these, to ask questions, and, all of us may have other things to do and not have the chance to drill into them, and that's what the process is for and why it's slow. But at the same time, to talk about this becoming at the 11th hour is not quite accurate. Granted, 10 days or 9 days is maybe a lot of time, or not a lot of time to digest some of this stuff. But it is something also that we have talked about, I know, for the last 5 years that I've been on council, that we've been looking at this as an area of reduction and so forth. So it is something that has been out there for a while. Thank you.
Councilmember James.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be voting in support of Councilmember Lawless's motion. I've been aware of the savings for equipment and potential operating changes in the waste management specifically, and really the entire division as a member of the council link that dealt with this entity for the past 2 years. So I was aware, I was also aware that there were folks watching the number grow, which it's kind of unfortunate if that's the case. I think one thing a couple of council members mentioned, over the past 10 years, the number's grown and grown. But what they didn't ask is how much has been spent on the things that were needed, and how many things have we delayed and put off, waiting until the appropriate time. And that's something that we continue to, some continue to choose to forget to say. I think to give a reference to our citizens that we base our budget on assumptions is wrong. Our budget, if you do it right during the budget time, you look at trends of spending in particular divisions of government, and you base that down to salt. We try to look at the trends of salt, even though it's hard to predict. Gas, we have to look at that. We make assumptions, but we're making educated guesses. It's not just we don't close our eyes and accept what's coming before us. The same as I respect the administration, I respect the mayor, but things, if we were just going to do everything the administration wanted to do, we wouldn't need us. We're here to look deeper at issues and look at it from a different perspective at times, and to have these conversations and questions. So I don't want anybody to think we do everything based on assumption, because we don't. We look at personnel expenditures for each division of government. We look at cost of training. We look at all that. If done correctly, the budget time is our most involved time in this government. And we should be spending a majority of our hours on that, because it's supposed to direct the rest of our year. So I nearly resent the statement that everything we do is based on assumption, because what are we working for? why are we spending so much time here and talking with our citizens if we're just going to make wild guesses when it's time to do something really crucial like this? So I will be supporting the motion. I favor all of the trend, everything we've talked about. I support Commissioner Taylor as far as changing equipment, getting a new recycling center, and all of that. I believe all that can happen, and I believe we may see efficiencies in that. But as Councilmember Gorton said the other day, let's see the efficiencies so we can base the fee on an accurate number and be able to show our citizens the efficiencies that we've made, not based on wild assumptions and guesses and numbers that I don't see a lot of people really standing behind and ready to come up behind this horseshoe and push this button for us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Myers, this will be your second opportunity to speak on the issue.
Thank you, Mayor. For me, the bottom line is it's not the role of government to create savings accounts. And any time the government is stockpiling money, it is basically an overtaxation of its people. We've got $25 million that's been racking up in the bank for years that is not being used. We need to give that back to the taxpayers who put that money in, find efficiencies in the system to decrease cost while doing more with what we have. And that's what this program is going to do. And so for me, the bottom line is we've got money sitting in the bank. That's not the role of government. We need to give the money back to the people. I'm going to vote against this motion, and I call a question. Thank you, Mayor.
I'm sorry. Did you make a motion? I'm sorry. I didn't hear it. I'm sorry. Call for the question. A call for the question won't terminate debate. A motion for the previous question would do that. That requires a 2/3 vote. Is that the motion you're now making? So the motion is to terminate debate through a motion for previous question, second by Councilmember McCord. It's non-debatable. Those in favor of the motion for the previous question, please indicate by voting aye electronically. Those opposed, vote nay. Madam Clerk, if you'd set the machine. That motion fails by a vote of 6. Okay, fails by a vote of 7-7. Did you have anything further, Councilmember Myers?
Thank you, Mayor.
I think it was Councilmember Gorton. Councilmember Gorton.
I was the only one left on the list to speak. So thank you for giving me that opportunity, colleagues. I just had one more comment, and that is that I do not believe, and this is based on 11 years here, that our government was building up a surplus for no reason. We were building up a surplus to pay cash for our recycling center. This is a fact, and those of us who were here back then went to the presentation to hear it. So, you know, lots of people like to pay in cash for things when they're strapped otherwise and they're bonded. And I do believe that if some of the people were here in waste management who were here back then, they would tell you the same thing.
I see no one else indicating a desire to speak, so if there is no further debate, we're prepared to vote on the motion to amend ordinance number 25. The motion is to amend ordinance 25 so as to restore the refuse collection tax to 0.159 rather than the currently proposed 0.1431. Those in favor, please indicate by voting aye electronically. Those opposed, vote nay electronically. The motion to amend fails by a vote of 10-13. Have all council members voted? 10-3. Excuse me, 10-3. Councilmember James. Okay, Councilmember James votes yes, and so the motion to amend fails by a vote of 4 to 10. Unless there's something further with regard to number 25, we'll proceed. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance levying ad valorem taxes for municipal purposes for the fiscal year July 1, 2009 through June 30, 2010 on the assessed value of all taxable property within the taxing jurisdictions of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County government, all taxes on each $100 of assessed valuation as of the January 1, 2009 assessment date as follows: General Services District, .0800 on real property, including real property of public service companies, .0990 on personal property, including personal property of public service companies, non-commercial aircraft and non-commercial watercraft, .1500 on insurance capital, .0150 on tobacco and storage, and .0450 on agricultural products in storage, full urban or partial urban service districts based on urban services available on real property, including real property of public service companies, .1431 for refuse collection, .0210 for street lights, .0094 for street cleaning, .0920 on insurance capital, .0150 on tobacco and storage, .0450 on agricultural products in storage, and levying an ad valorem tax for municipal purposes at the rate of .0880 on each $100 of assessed value on all motor vehicles and watercraft within the taxing jurisdiction of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County government as of the January 1, 2010 assessment date. Number 26, an ordinance levying ad valorem taxes for purposes of support of the Soil and Water Conservation District for the fiscal year July 1, 2009 through June 30, 2010 on the assessed value of all taxable real property within the taxing jurisdiction of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County government, including real property of public service companies at a rate of .0004 on each $100 of assessed valuation as of the January 1, 2009 assessment date. Number 27, an ordinance levying ad valorem taxes for purposes of support of the Agricultural Extension Office for the fiscal year July 1, 2009 through June 30, 2010 on the assessed value of all taxable real and personal property within the taxing jurisdiction of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County government, all taxes on each $100 of assessed valuation as of the January 1, 2009 assessment date as follows: .0032 on all taxable real property, including real property of public service companies, .0035 on taxable personal property, including personal property of public service companies, non-commercial aircraft and non-commercial watercraft, and excluding inventory in transit, insurance capital, tobacco in storage, and agricultural products in storage, and levying an ad valorem tax for purposes of support of the Agricultural Extension Office at the rate of .0032 on each $100 of assessed value on all motor vehicles and watercraft within the taxing jurisdiction of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County government as of the January 1, 2010 assessment date. Number 28, an ordinance pursuant to a request received from the Lexington-Fayette County Health Department levying an ad valorem tax for purposes of support of the Lexington-Fayette County Health Department for the fiscal year July 1, 2009 through June 30, 2010 on the assessed value of all taxable real and personal property within the taxing jurisdiction of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County government, including real and personal property of public service companies, non-commercial aircraft, non-commercial watercraft, and inventory in transit, and excluding insurance capital, tobacco in storage, and agricultural products in storage at the rate of .028 on each $100 of assessed value as of January 1, 2009 assessment date, and levying an ad valorem tax for purposes of support of the Lexington-Fayette County Health Department at the rate of .028 on each $100 of assessed value on all motor vehicles and watercraft within the taxing jurisdiction of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County government as of the January 1, 2010 assessment date.
Thank you very much. If there are no motions, Madam Clerk, please proceed to give second reading to the resolutions entitled to second reading.
Resolution number 1, a resolution accepting the bid of Office Depot Incorporated, establishing a price contract for office supplies for the Division of Central Purchasing. Number 2, a resolution accepting the bid of Mary's Cleaning Service, establishing a price contract for custodial services, Gainesway Police RC PAL Empowerment and Community Center for the Division of Facilities and Fleet Management. Number 3, a resolution accepting the bid of Terra Blue Incorporated in accordance with the provisions of Ordinance Number 240/2008, creating and offering for sale a franchise for the operation of a non-exclusive telecommunications system in Fayette County through December 8, 2011, and authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute a franchise agreement with Terra Blue Incorporated, incorporating the terms and conditions of Ordinance Number 240/2008. Number 4, a resolution accepting the bids of Asplund Tree Expert Company, Virginia Turf Management Associates Incorporated, Lexington Tree Service Incorporated, Big Beaver Tree Service Incorporated, Tree Pro Incorporated, Core Services LLC, Classic Cut Lawn and Landscape Service Incorporated, Tree Tech Services Incorporated, and Swartz Mowing Incorporated, establishing price contracts for tree removal for the Division of Streets, Roads, and Forestry. Number 5, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute an amendment to agreement with Commonwealth Inspection Bureau Incorporated for electrical inspection services to provide for a reduction in the minimum number of inspectors and vehicles in certain instances at no cost to the Urban County government. Number 6, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute an amendment to the software product license agreement with Granicus Incorporated for maintenance and support of the video web streaming and council chambers voting system for fiscal year 2010 and an additional year, subject to sufficient funds being appropriated for the additional year, reducing the cost to $29,640, $2,470 per month. Number 7, a resolution initiating a land subdivision regulations text amendment for Planning Commission consideration and recommendation to amend the utility standards in Article 6.5A of the land subdivision regulations to require utility lines to be installed below ground with the exception of major facilities and providing standards for such installation. Number 8, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute an agreement with the U.S. Department of Justice Drug Enforcement Administration for continuation of the DEA task force at no cost to the Urban County government. Number 9, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute a memorandum of understanding with the University of Kentucky for reimbursement for traffic control costs at no cost to the Urban County government. Number 10, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute agreements with Lexington Local Investment Commission, LexLink, $550, American Lung Association of Kentucky Incorporated, $350, YMCA of Central Kentucky, Beaumont Center Branch, $400, ACT Ministries Incorporated, $650, the Temple of Prayer and God in Christ Incorporated, $475, Windward Neighborhood Association Incorporated, $500, and Russell Cave Church of Christ Incorporated, $300 for the office of the Urban County Council at a cost not to exceed the sum stated. Number 11, a resolution ratifying the probationary civil service appointment of Cindra Brown, Administrative Specialist Principal, Grade 114E, 1467.20 biweekly in the Division of Community Development, effective August 17, 2009, ratifying the probationary sworn appointments of Guy Green, Police Lieutenant, Grade 317E, 2937.03 biweekly in the Division of Police, effective August 31, 2009, Christopher Morrow, Police Sergeant, Grade 315N, 27.755 hourly in the Division of Police, effective August 31, 2009, approving the unclassified civil service appointments of Eldar Agayev, Tyson Carroll, Robert Chin, David Collins, James Cox, Ira Duncan, Daniel Florence, George Halls, Jonathan Holliday, Olivia Lloyd, Danny McGuire, Ryan Raker, Doman Ruggles, Michael Steele, Eric Stroud, Joshua Talbert, Brian Vall, Chad Wilson, Ricky Yates Jr., Police Trainee, Grade 311N, 17.135 hourly in the Division of Police, effective August 31, 2009. Logan Stricker, Police Trainee, Grade 311N, 17.135 hourly in the Division of Police, effective September 2, 2009. Number 12, a resolution approving the report of the audit examination of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County Government Sheriff Settlement 2008 taxes for taxes collected as of April 23, 2009, and granting the sheriff a quietus. 13, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute change order number 1 to the contract with HH General Contractor Incorporated for the Police Health Care Center, increasing the contract price by the sum of $39,505 from $75,950 to $115,455. Number 14, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute a maintenance agreement with New World Systems Corporation for software maintenance at a cost not to exceed $221,178. Number 15, a resolution changing the street name and property address number of 241 Clark Street to 240 Corral Street, of 240 Clark Street to 105 Spruce Street, of 609 through 611, 615, and 619 through 621 Tipton Alley to 532, 536, and 535 Poplar Street, of 1764, 1768, and 1772 Ali Sheba Way to 3000, 3008, and 3009 Atkinson Avenue, of 2747 Liberty Road to 1744 Ali Sheba Way, and of 2545 Georgetown Road to 2420 Spur Road, changing the property address numbers of 807 Oak Hill Drive to 809 Oak Hill Drive, of 427 Stoll Pool Court to 423 Stoll Pool Court, of 721 Shropshire Avenue to 717 Shropshire Avenue, of 1424 High Lawn Avenue to 1428 High Lawn Avenue, of 120, 121, and 234 Ford Place to 215, 221, and 224 Ford Place, and of 332 and 601, 603 Chestnut Street to 330 and 601 Chestnut Street, and changing the street name of 220 Clark Street to 220 Corral Street, all effective 30 days from passage. Number 16, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute an agreement with Kathy H. Witt, Sheriff of Fayette County, for the collection of the Urban Service District taxes for the 2009 property tax year at a cost not to exceed $350,000 with payment net from collections. Number 17, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute a paramedic training program agreement with the City of Paris Fire Department for participation by the City of Paris Fire Department in the program at no cost to the Urban County government. Number 18, a resolution amending Section 1 of Resolution Number 465, 2009, which authorized and directed the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to approve Collins and Company Incorporated as the third-party claims administrator to provide workers' compensation claims services for the Urban County government for fiscal year 2009 at an annual cost of $139,200. Number 19, a resolution accepting the bid of Gershman, Brickner, and Bratton Incorporated in the amount of $1,655,596 for waste management routing software and implementation services for the Division of Waste Management, and authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute an agreement as necessary with Gershman, Brickner, and Bratton Incorporated related to the bid. Number 20, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute agreements with Black Church Coalition of the Bluegrass Incorporated, $1,275, and Bluegrass Blue Bombers Sports Incorporated, $300 for the office of the Urban County Council at a cost not to exceed the sum stated. Number 21, a resolution authorizing the Division of Human Resources to internally advertise for a GIS specialist position in the Division of Computer Services.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That completes the reading of resolutions entitled a second reading. Is there a motion to approve those resolutions? Is there a motion from Councilmember Ellinger and a second by Councilmember Crosby to approve those resolutions? Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. Those in favor of approving those resolutions, please indicate by voting yes electronically. Those opposed, vote nay electronically. And Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Gray? Yes. Ms. Henson?
Yes.
Ms. James? Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Ms. Lawless?
Yes.
Mr. Martin? Mr. McCord?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Stinnett? Mr. Beard?
Aye.
Ms. Crosby? Yes. Mr. Ellinger? Ms. Feigl? And Ms. Gordon?
Aye.
Thank you. Those resolutions are unanimously approved. That takes us now down to the resolutions entitled the first reading. Yes. Councilmember Martin, we voted to, thank you. We'll record a yes vote for Councilmember Martin. Thank you. All right. Councilmember Feigl.
Thank you, Mayor. For the record, I would just like to say that that I pushed the wrong button on the vote on the amendment for 25, Councilmember Lawless's amendment. I had intended to vote no on that, and I pushed the wrong button, apparently, and voted yes. So I'd like for the record to show that I voted against that amendment.
And was that consistent with your voice vote?
Did we do a voice vote?
That's right. We did not do it.
We can go back in and change that in the record.
I'll ask the parliamentarian for a ruling.
Normally, you can't change your vote, but if this was an electronic issue, we've never had that, honestly. So if this council deems that that's changing her vote rather than an error, then it would not be allowed.
There was no voice vote, though.
That particular,
just electronic. We've never had the issue. We only had these machines about a little over a year, so this never came up yet.
Now it has.
Well, I suppose a motion to suspend the rules in order to grant permission to alter a vote would be the means by which that could be permitted. I have a motion by Councilmember Crosby and a second by Councilmember Martin to suspend the rules. Councilmember Gordon has
A question.
point of information.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is that in the past, when the vote is closed, which it was closed, we have never allowed someone to change their vote for any reason. So I guess this will open us up to anyone who says they accidentally pressed the wrong button. We can grant them changing their vote. I mean, is this not true, Mr. Parliamentarian?
Is there a reason there was no voice vote on that issue, on that particular issue?
The only time we take votes and do the electronic vote as well is when we're actually voting on resolutions or ordinances. And usually routine things are done by voice vote. Close matters, we go ahead and vote electronically. Actually, a motion to suspend the rules is non-debatable. Unless there's some point of order or point of information, we ought to proceed to vote. And let's do this electronically. We can all stand the practice here. Those in favor of suspending the rules to allow Councilmember Feigl to change your vote, please indicate by voting aye. Those opposed to suspending the rules, please indicate by voting no. It requires a 2/3 majority. Have all council members voted? Motion fails. All right.
Thank you, Mayor.
Vote will stand as is, but we'll note your position. Madam Clerk, we're ready for resolutions entitled to first reading.
Number 22, a resolution accepting the bid of Bluegrass Contracting Corporation in the amount of $1,225,006.25 for the Vons Branch Flood Hazard Mitigation Project for the Divisions of Community Development and Engineering, and authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County Government to execute an agreement with Bluegrass Contracting Corporation related to the bid. Number 23, a resolution accepting the bid of Allen Vanguard Technologies Incorporated, establishing a price contract for ballistic ensemble for the Division of Police. Number 24, a resolution ratifying the probationary civil service appointments of Susan Pfluger, Municipal Engineer Senior, grade 119E, 2771.60 biweekly in the Division of Water Quality, effective September 14, 2009. Jennifer Bass, Telecommunicator Senior, grade 113N, 17.131 hourly in the Division of Emergency Management 911, effective September 14, 2009. Paulette Leduc, Telecommunicator Senior, grade 113N, 17.206 hourly in the Division of Emergency Management 911, effective September 14, 2009. Number 25, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County Government to execute change order number 1 to the contract with Denham Blythe Company Incorporated for the Lyric Theater project, increasing the contract price by the sum of $16,313.12 from $5,560,322.66 to $5,576,635.78. Number 26, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County Government to execute change orders to the contract for the Lyric Theater renovation addition with Denham Blythe Company Incorporated, subject to specific conditions. Number 27, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County Government to execute a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Veterans Affairs for emergency responses at no cost to the Urban County Government. Number 28, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County Government to execute an additional software license agreement with New World Systems Corporation for use of software at a cost not to exceed $58,560.
Mayor.
Councilmember Crosby.
Mayor, I have a motion on number 29. Several of us have discussed this, and we've talked with Councilmember Lawless, and at this moment, I'd like to make a motion to remove number 29 from the docket.
Second.
Okay, I'll stop there, and we can just discuss it. I'll say the reason why I'm removing this is Councilmember Lawless has gotten, and I think all of us have gotten a lot of community input regarding number 29, and I think that Councilmember Lawless and most people up here believe that she might be able to come up with another resolution to bring back to the council probably within a week that we all might be able to agree on, and she might be able to meet with all parties who are interested, and that might give her a little bit more time to come up with something. So with that, I'll make this motion, and obviously if we remove it, we're able to debate that. So thank you for my second, and I'll stop there.
The motion is to remove it from the docket and for an unspecified period of time. Just is that correct?
It's just to remove it. I believe that Councilmember Lawless probably has a timeline of when she'll be bringing something back, which will be very shortly. I don't want to put a timeline on her, but it's my understanding that she is meeting with people next week. Since we are not in session next week, I'm hopeful that it'll probably be the following Tuesday at work session, and then we'll be doing the reading the next Thursday.
Okay, and let me ask just a procedural clarification here. This sounds like a motion to table.
No, it's to remove it, and she'll be coming back with something completely different to replace this.
All right. Motion by Councilmember Crosby is to remove item 29 from the docket. Councilmember Myers has seconded that motion, and it is debatable. So, does anyone wish to address the motion? Councilmember Law, let me make sure. Councilmember Gordon, I have you on the screen, but that's a stale. Councilmember Lawless.
Thank you. I've had a lot of discussions with a lot of people over the last few days, and we can do a first and second reading if we want to at the next council meeting when this would have gotten a second reading. But clearly, it is not a perfect document. So a lot of people, including Councilmember Crosby, have been working hard to help me get input from different places. The Remodelers Association, Mr. Johnson and I, they had a meeting yesterday. I had spoken with him briefly before I introduced this. I don't think this is well written. There is a very vague definition of structure, so it definitely has problems. And I didn't write it because I'm not an attorney, thank God. And so I'm meeting with several folks on Tuesday. I'm firmly pushing this and supporting this, but if we don't have a good document to bring forward, we won't get anything passed. And so with a lot of good and helpful council input from around the horseshoe and all the emails from both sides of the issue, I'm excited to have a better written document that addresses. So it will do exactly what we want it to do, no more and no less. Nobody wants to put anybody out of work, and nobody wants to override deed restrictions that are already there, or ND1 or H1. It's not meant to do that, and all of that is left out of this document. So thank you to all the council members and to all the people in the community that have addressed this. I appreciate your support, and trust me, I'm going forward as hard and fast as I can with this, but we have to be able to have something that works and works well. We don't want unintended impact. So all you folks that are here tonight, please feel free to talk about it and address the council, but I want you to know this is a collaborative effort, not a blind side, if you will. So thank you.
Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm in agreement with what you said because I thought it was quite inappropriate that this included the entire urban service boundary. I would ask that when you meet with folks, you include some neighbors.
Oh.
Will you do that?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank
I always
you.
include neighbors.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lane.
Thank you, Mayor. I took some time and I drove through your neighborhood, and I feel just from looking at the property from the outside that some of those improvements are not appropriate for the neighborhood. And I'm not in favor, though, of putting a moratorium on all renovation in Fayette County, because we have hundreds of home builders and remodelers and thousands of craftsmen that work on houses that'll be without work, and I just don't think that's the right approach. I would like to encourage you to look at page 821 of the zoning ordinance, and there's several sections in here, but in a R1C zoning, there are very limited uses that are permitted, and if in fact the people that have renovated the homes there are renting to people and running more of a boarding house, that is not permitted in the R1C zoning category. And under the ordinance, the zoning ordinance, that anybody in the neighborhood could file a complaint with the building inspector, and then they're obligated to do an inspection of the property and see what the application is. That's what I would recommend as an immediate effort on behalf of the neighbors, to have the government actually come in and inspect the property. Because even if we granted a building permit for a single-family residence, but the person that owns the property is renting it to others, I think you can have 2 boarders in a single-family residence, but that's it. Then it seems like there might be action where we could restrict the rental of the property. Now, I'm not a real estate attorney, I'm not a zoning expert, I'm just an average citizen like you guys, but that's what I interpret in the ordinance, and I would encourage you to take that approach, see what our building inspection department has to say about it. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Feigl.
Thank you, Mayor. I, too, have gotten lots of emails and phone calls and have talked with a lot of folks about this particular item on the agenda. But this is, in fact, why I did vote to put it on the agenda, so that it would generate a lot of input from people in the community, and that we could have a good debate on it, and that we could come up with an ordinance or a resolution that would actually do what it was intended to do. I think the idea was to walk it on tonight, and I felt like that there needed to be some advance notice to everybody in the community. Well, when I talked with Councilmember Lawless, that was one of the options, was to either bring it up at work session or walk it on tonight. And I encouraged her to bring it to work session. And so that it could be on the docket for tonight, and that everybody would get notice that we were going to be deliberating this issue. So I'm very pleased to learn that the input has caused us to step back and take another look at this. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. I still think these structures are being used as apartment buildings in single-family zones, and I agree that we've got a problem. We need to figure out a way to fix them. I agree with Councilmember Lane's observations about our zoning ordinance. There are tools that we have to try to address this, and I'm looking forward to working with our folks here in the city to try to make sure that we can put that in place. We have a zoning code that's still a little bit out of date, and we're going to hopefully take a look at that and see whether we can make some changes to the zoning ordinance so that it's even more clear than it is that you can't have an apartment building in a single-family zone. I don't think that a moratorium on renovation is the solution here, because that's a very broad brush, and a lot of contractors and craftsmen would be hurt by that. I think there's a more creative solution that we can find. Lexington's not the only college town in America, and someplace has come up with a way to fix this. And so I think smart, creative investigating about how other folks have solved this problem is what we need, and that's what we need to do as quickly as we can so that we can sort of get this in place. So thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Lawless.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I appreciate the help, and there will be a better document that doesn't hurt people that we're not trying to hurt and we don't want to hurt. But it is so frustrating for me right now that as I sit and I hear Councilmember Lane and talking about boarding houses and et cetera. And so I would invite you, Councilmember Lane, to call building inspection and talk to them about it. And Councilmember Martin, I appreciate your support for this not being right. We know that, and we've tried all those things you've suggested. I'm very excited that everybody's very excited now about doing something about it. And until we can know, a moratorium isn't, it would be really nice if we could have all the answers tomorrow. But by then, this past Tuesday night, while we were here, a yard was blacktop and a curb cut put in on Elizabeth Street. So perfectly legally, and it was done while we were here at work session. So I invite all of you all to come And please call building inspection and talk to them about it. And I invite you all to, I would love to have you all join me for a tour of some of the neighborhoods impacted by this. So I'm very excited that everybody's real excited about passing ordinances and making changes and all that. That's extraordinarily good news because this has been going on for years and nobody's done anything about it. Thank you, thank you.
Vice Mayor Gray.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to acknowledge Councilmember Lawless's leadership on this issue and the patience, the extraordinary patience, probably too much patience of these neighbors in these neighborhoods that are experiencing really what amounts to economic destruction. There's no other way to put it. It's happened. We've ignored it. Universities ignored it. And it's like that old fellow on Network, what was it, that movie from the 70s? He said, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And that's what these people are saying. And I think that we recognize that the tension has risen on this issue. That's part of problem solving. And thanks to acknowledge Councilmember Crosby for relieving the tension to some extent, but not dialing it down so far that we're going to avoid the problem. That's what Councilmember Lawless has said. She says she's going to hang in there and stay in the ring, and and many of us are as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Lane, this will be your second opportunity to speak on the matter.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, if we don't enforce the ordinances that we have, it doesn't really do any good to add new ordinances. And I'd like to read 2 paragraphs out of the zoning ordinance, which says, building permits or certificates of occupancy issued on the basis of plans and applications approved by the Division of Building Inspection authorize only the use, arrangements, and construction set forth in such permits, plans, and certificates, and no other. The use, arrangement, or construction at variance with that authorized shall be deemed a violation of the zoning ordinance. And then, for the record, any person who so violates the zoning ordinance or fails to comply with any of its requirements, except as provided in Section 5.8b, shall upon conviction thereof be fined not less than $10, but not more than $500 for each conviction, and each day of violation shall constitute a separate offense. So $500 a day penalty for violating the zoning ordinance to me is a substantial penalty. And I still say that as your neighborhood, I ask you to file a complaint on the property owners that you feel are in violation of the zoning ordinance, and see if our government can apply the laws we have on the books before we go and place a moratorium on the entire Urban County government that we can't build anything. I think that's just totally inappropriate. And I'm opposed to what's going on down there, but I think we have to do it in a reasoned, well-judged manner and not try to do some kind of blanket moratorium. That is not good government policy, and it's not good economic policy, and we're in a recession right now, and we don't want to throw some of our fellow Lexingtonians out of work because they can't remodel a house. I just think this is a bad policy that we have at hand right now. Thank you.
Mayor, point of order. We need to keep the discussion to the question, and the question is, do we remove it from the docket? Not whether or not we're for or against moratoriums, but should it be removed tonight from the docket?
Your point is well taken, and I'll ask council members to confine their remarks in that general framework. Councilmember James.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll support removing it from the docket, knowing that there's going to be a lot more research going into it. And it's not just the 3rd district or issue, it's in the 1st district too. So I'm watching it closely. It's not just a student housing issue, it's an affordable housing issue, or people trying to make money off of people living in one place issue, or whatever. So I will support, and I would like to give some input as far as 1st district is concerned, and I hope that it's not limited to only the 3rd. Thank you.
Councilmember Myers.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I just want to say briefly that I'm glad that we are removing this from the docket because bad legislation is never the answer for anything. We do have problems out there. We need to solve the problem, but putting blanket moratoriums on is not the answer. We know that back a few years ago, we had a moratorium that lasted for 2.5, 3 years that was supposed to deal with this issue, and the people who were in office then, Planning Commission and all those different things, failed us and didn't find a correct solution, and so here we are again today. So we don't just put moratoriums on there that put people out of business, hoping that we come up with some good legislation somewhere along the line. So I've got some questions that I want to ask. I know this isn't the time to do it, but I just want to say I'm glad that we're doing this. I think we have the votes to do it either way, to remove this. And again, bad legislation is never the answer. Thank you.
Councilmember Martin.
Mayor.
This will be your second opportunity to speak on this issue.
Once again, I find myself agreeing with Councilmember Lane, but I also agree with the frustration of Councilmember Lawless. This is a failure of enforcement. We have rules on our books which should be give us the tools to take action against apartment buildings on the back of single-family cottages in a residential zone. I think we can improve our rules, and I think we're going to look at try to find smart solutions, hopefully that have been developed in other college towns. But we have to enforce the rules we have if we're going to be a city and we're going to have laws and that people follow. We cannot allow this type of neighborhood, and it's a neighborhood, my sister lives in that neighborhood, and we can't allow it to deteriorate. And we can't allow this kind of creeping to continue, and we do that through the enforcement of the laws that we have. If we don't enforce our laws, we're not a civilized society, and we can't do business the way people expect it to be done. So not only do we as a council have to find a solution, but also we as a city government have to enforce the rules we have. And I've had houses in my district where we've met with everybody under the sun trying to figure out how to solve this kind of an issue, and we've been told, it's not against the rules, and actually it is. So we've got work to do. Thank you, Mayor.
Does any other member of the council wish to speak on the motion to remove item 29 from the docket? Seeing none, we'll vote. All in favor of removing item 29 from the docket, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Let me chime in just on a couple of things here. First of all, everybody should be aware this issue came up in the Planning Committee about 2 years ago. It's wound up in Student Housing Task Force for the last couple of years. I know there is a draft afoot, but I'm going to be asking the Student Housing Task Force to try to wrap up its work immediately so that Councilmember Lawless can have the benefit of that work as a part of the whole process. And I hope we will, as a government, work diligently to try to bring this to some resolution promptly. Madam Clerk, if you'll start with item 30 then.
Number 30, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute a modification of an agreement with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet for operations and maintenance of traffic signals through June 30, 2010 at a cost not to exceed $300,000. Number 31, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute and submit a grant application to the Kentucky Emergency Management Agency and to provide any additional information requested in connection with this grant application, which grant funds are in the amount of $108,750 federal funds and $17,400 Commonwealth of Kentucky funds and are for the Lexington-Fayette County Comprehensive Hazard Mitigation Plan. Number 32, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute an amendment to agreement with REACH Incorporated for an additional $100,000 for the first-time home buyers program at a cost not to exceed an additional $100,000. Number 33, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute an agreement with Metropolitan Women's Club Incorporated, $450 for the office of the Urban County Council at a cost not to exceed the sum stated.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any motions? Councilmember Henson. I don't believe your microphone is on, Councilmember Henson.
It's getting late. I'm sorry. I move to place on the docket for first reading a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor to execute a contract with Kroger Limited Partnership 1 to supply and administer influenza vaccinations to the Urban County government employees. So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and second to add that item to the docket. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Madam Clerk, would you give
Mayor,
it first?
I have another one to walk on as well.
All right, we can go ahead and deal with them all at once.
Okay.
Councilman.
Thank you. I move to place on the docket for first reading a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor to approve a closing agreement between Vulcan Lands, Inc. and the University of Kentucky, which obligates the Urban County government to construct, maintain, operate a fence and pedestrian bicycle trail to be known as the Legacy Trail that will be located in close proximity to Vulcan's Georgetown Road Quarry. So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. The motion carries. Anything further? Madam Clerk, if you give first reading to both of those matters.
Number 34, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute a contract with Kroger Limited Partnership 1 to supply influenza vaccine and administer vaccinations to Lexington Fayette Urban County government employees at a cost of $22 per employee, not to exceed $24,300. And number 35, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute the approval of a closing agreement between Vulcan Lands Incorporated and the University of Kentucky, which obligates the Urban County government to construct, maintain, operate, and fence a pedestrian bicycle trail to be known as the Legacy Trail that will be located in close proximity to Vulcan's Georgetown Road Quarry.
Councilmember James.
I'd like to suspend the rules, Mayor, and give second, or ask for suspension of the rules, give second reading to number 35, 25, and 26.
$35, $25, and $26.
Yes.
Correct. Thank you. Any further? Councilmember Henson.
Mayor, I'd like to add number 34, please.
All right. Others? Councilmember McCord.
Yes, I'd like to add number 35. This will allow us to move into this construction season, thus saving money, and this is the project we want to have done before the World Equestrian Games.
We already have it on the list from Councilmember James. Any others? All right. Got a motion by Councilmember James, and I'll take a second from Councilmember Henson to suspend the rules for purposes of giving second reading to items 25, 26, 34, and 35. If there's no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote. Those in favor of suspending the rules to give second reading to those four items, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Madam Clerk.
Number 25, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute change order number 1 to the contract with Denham Blythe Company Incorporated for the Lyric Theater project, increasing the contract price by the sum of $16,313.12 from $5,560,322.66 to $5,576,635.78. Number 26, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute change orders to the contract for the Lyric Theater Renovation Edition with Denham Blythe Company Incorporated, subject to specific conditions. Number 34, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute a contract with Kroger Limited Partnership 1 to supply influenza vaccine and administer vaccinations to Lexington Fayette Urban County government employees at a cost of $22 per employee, not to exceed $24,300. And number 35, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute the approval of a closing agreement between Vulcan Lands Incorporated and the University of Kentucky, which obligates the Urban County government to construct, maintain, operate, and fence a pedestrian bicycle trail to be known as the Legacy Trail that will be located in close proximity to Vulcan's Georgetown Road Quarry.
The floor is open for a motion to approve those four.
Second.
Councilmember Crosby has moved the adoption of those four resolutions. Councilmember Gordon has seconded the motion. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by voting aye electronically. Those opposed vote nay electronically. And Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Gray? Ms. Henson?
Yes.
Ms. James? Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Ms. Lawless? Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCord?
Yes.
Mr. Myers? Mr. Stinnett? Mr. Beard?
Aye.
Ms. Crosby? Mr. Ellinger?
Yes.
Ms. Feigl? Ms. Gordon?
Aye.
Mr. Gray?
All right. Those resolutions are unanimously approved. You have some communications under item 9. They are for information purposes only. Are there any announcements? See none. We have a number of people who have indicated a desire to speak during the public comment section. I'm not entirely clear whether they are all still here, but I'll just start at the beginning, and we'll go through the list of about 19 folks who have signed up. Dr. Rowe.
Melinda Rowe, Lake-Fayette County Health Department. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. I wanted to make sure, if you'd not seen the media today, the governor had a pan flu summit in Frankfurt, and he announced the first H1N1, or the new swine flu associated death in Kentucky. And unfortunately, that was to a Fayette County woman in her 50s who had significant underlying health conditions. And I wanted to make you aware of that, because last time I was here and I talked to you about H1N1, I told you that I would keep you updated. So I brought you a packet of information because we want to make sure that people get education about this. In any given year with seasonal flu, we will see 300 to 400 deaths in Kentucky just from regular seasonal flu, and across the nation we'll see 36,000 deaths. That's seasonal flu. H1N1 has been acting like seasonal flu so far. We have seasonal flu vaccine, and we want people to get those shots, not just the health department, but a lot of health care providers, a lot of the pharmacies, Kroger, different places like that. So we really want to encourage people, especially people with underlying health conditions, because this lady, like I said, had serious health conditions. What do I mean by that? I mean things like asthma, lung disease, heart disease, kidney disease, liver disease. If you've got any sort of like cancer, immune compromising situation, get that seasonal flu shot. But we basically want anybody between 6 months of age on, if you want to avoid getting the flu, get the seasonal flu shot. We do not have the H1N1 vaccine yet. We hope to get that in October. And again, we're going to use a lot of community partners to get those shots given, because the vaccine is the best weapon we have against the H1N1. We have a flu hotline if any of your folks want to call, they've got questions. We've also got community outreach teams that will come out and talk. They'll come to your neighborhood associations. So there's just a lot of information. I won't go through all of it in the late hour of the night, but I just wanted to make sure that you were aware. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Dr. Rowe? Thanks for keeping us up to speed. Next on the list is Kathy Franklin. Ms. Franklin, if you'll step to the podium, you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm here about the moratorium. I guess things have changed a bit, so I guess my comments are going to change a bit. Let me just address a few things. We do talk to anybody we can about what's going on in our neighborhoods. It has not worked. Okay? Just so you know, you can tell us to go do it. We've done it. Just so you know. The other thing is a recent addition on Westwood Court, called about it. They said, they got a permit, it's okay. It's about twice the size of the original house. The blacktopping on Elizabeth Street, they got a permit, it's okay. I don't know where the disconnect is here, but there's a disconnect. And if you're encouraging us not to put a moratorium on, to just stop this now so we can collect and enforce these rules, enforce these ordinances. That's what we want, is just to make it stop. So my point is that it ain't working. We can't make it work, and obviously y'all ain't making it work either. So if it's out there and we can't do anything, and we've tried and we've asked. Go ahead, make it happen. That's what we want, make it happen. And I don't know what the rest of them are going to say. And you know the place, I mean, you know these neighborhoods are going downhill, and we really need to stop it soon. And so if in the next, before whatever happens, someone walks into planning or zoning or building or whatever and says, I'm building a 3,000 square foot addition on the back of a 1,500 square foot house, what are they going to tell them? Go ahead. That's what they're going to tell them. And there's plenty of houses that are slated for that in my neighborhood. So maybe you could tell whoever it is who gives these permits to stop giving these permits, because that's what's happening. Since we've all established now that that's not the right thing and that's not what the ordinances say, I don't want to see it happen, because now we all know, and they need to know too. Thanks. And thank you all for thinking about this, and I know we're a little disappointed, but if it's going to be better, we want it to be better. But just do it soon. Thanks a lot.
Counts, let's refrain from the applause, if you would, please. It will enable us all to leave a little earlier, and I'm sure everybody has their supporters here tonight. The third person is Kate Savage. Ms. Savage?
No.
I'm Kate Savage. I live at 619 Columbia Avenue. I'm president of the Columbia Heights Neighborhood Association. I don't necessarily represent them, but I do have some credibility as that particular person. I think pictures tell 1,000 words, so I'm going to give you some pictures. This is on Columbia Avenue last year. It took no time at all to demolish this house. One big bulldozer and it was gone. There it is, nothing between two houses on Columbia Avenue. This is a lot on Hollywood Terrace that was bulldozed about 5 years ago during the H1 process. It still sits empty, and now it has a Ray Rector sign erected in it. I suspect the person, because of the downturn, has not been able to sell this piece of property. The grass is long. We report the grass. Can't really see this very well, but this is by Kroger's on Marquee. This is up for an absolute auction in the middle of September. A huge lot. What are they going to put there? We have no idea. Everybody on the street is very concerned what they're going to have to live with on Marquee. Talking about big boxes, big vinyl boxes, this is also either on Columbia or Park. I'm not sure. There's only about 400 houses in my little neighborhood association. About 50% owner-occupied. Some streets are better than others. This is just a modest home from the outside, from the front. This is the back. This is the back of the same property. Now, these are illegal boarding houses. These are not single-family residences, and nothing has been done about them, and reporting them accomplishes nothing. Again, sorry, the picture's not very good. This is graveled and backyard problems that continue behind your back, behind my back, behind everybody's back. We wake up, there are no trees. Now, when you were looking out on a bucolic view from your kitchen window, you're looking at blacktop and cars and listening to them rev up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Again, a modest house. And there's the addition. That big white piece is the addition to that little cottage. Another one on Columbia, 561 Columbia. And that's the back of it. Illegal boarding houses, ladies and gentlemen, that's going on right in District 3. We're sick of it. Another one. Nice little brick house. Look at that huge monstrosity attached to the back. What are we going to do? Report them? Tell them to tear it down?
Ms. Savage, you have about 25
Thank you.
seconds left.
I think I'll just run through. This is my favorite house. Cute, on Marquee, dead-end street, little yellow house. And that's the addition on the back. No backyard. About 6 or 8 kids live there, and they use it as a fraternity house off campus. So they can drink, and now when they go smokeless, I guess they'll all be puffing up as well in there. So we need your help. We need it now. We're sick of waiting. We've waited long enough. We need some deadlines, and you need to impose them on yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, please refrain from applause for the balance of the meeting, regardless of the comments, whether you like them or not. It'll make us get through the process much quicker. The next person is Janet Cowan. Ms. Cowan?
Not a council member, but I play one sometimes on TV. I'm Janet Cowan. I live at 612 Columbia Avenue, and 2 years ago, I stood here, and I was promised by most of you on this council when we were fighting an H1, pro, con, we're all together on something needs to be done. I was promised by most of you that something would be worked out. I contacted the mayor's office several weeks after that because I heard nothing, and I was told to contact Charlie Bolin. I did. He knew nothing about the issue, but I knew Charlie because, you see, in 1999, I served on student housing task force with which I gave Kate actually a copy of that. Same stuff, and 10 years ago. Understand my frustration tonight. It's not, I know all of the numbers, Mr. Lane, I have them on speed dial. I get nothing. I have a small house across the street from me that houses 6 to 8, 10, has parking for 2. Guess where they park? In my driveway. They block my driveway. They knock my wall off, my retaining wall over. I call the police. Well, was anybody hurt? Come on. Mr. McCord, Mr. Stennett, Mr. Myers, Mr. Beard, Miss Gordon, Mayor, Mr. Gray, Mr. Ellinger, Miss Crosby, Miss James, you all promised me that you were going to help. 2 years ago, I ask you to do it now. Thank you.
Next on the list is Ted Cowan. Is Mr. Cowan here? All right. Mr. McCarthy.
For the record, my name is Bernard McCarthy, and I don't claim to represent anybody else, although I will refer to a few entities. It's been brought to my attention that a consultant hired by this government to draw up plans for replacement housing to be built to replace the neighborhood being wiped out by Newtown Extension has written the specifications so fancy that my favorite nonprofit organization is effectively shut out of getting to build any of the replacement housing. Now, while I think it's legitimate to build decent house, to make sure that anyone displaced by a road gets a house back that's at least as good as the one they lost, and that replacement houses do need to meet certain minimum standards. They need to be safe, sanitary, and decent, and structurally sound. But when you go and start writing fancy specifications to where you want people to get mansions in exchange for their shacks, this has gone beyond legitimate mitigation and sounds more like a plot to bankrupt the road fund so that Newtown Extension winds up being the last road built in Fayette County. And I rather object to such plots because we have considerably more traffic problems that need more roads to solve them in the future. And I also, having put much of my vacation time and my Saturdays over the last 18 years into volunteering for one organization, I would kind of like to get a shot at hammering the nails on a few of those replacement houses myself.
Thank you. Keith Rogers. Mr. Rogers. And next is Neil Cheddick. If you could stand by close to the podium after Mr. Rogers.
Keith Rogers. I live at 1421 Audubon Avenue. I've lived there since 1987. I love my home. Unfortunately, I'm now the only owner-occupied property on the street. The rest of it has been demolished for either Delta Tau Delta fraternity or bought by absentee landlords. And I guess over the years, the alternatives are to give up my home, to be driven out of my home, or to fight for my home. I'd like to remain on the street. I feel I'm the only constant on the street. And when I go, I guess the students have it, and then it really does become your problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Mr. Cheddick and then Mark Barker. Mr. Barker, if you could stand by, please. Mr. Cheddick.
Yes, I'm Neil Chethik from the Seven Parks neighborhood. I'm, I guess, the fourth neighborhood that's being represented here today. And fortunately, I've been there since 2001. And fortunately, prior to getting there, someone had the foresight to institute a historic preservation. So we don't have the same problem on my street, but we abut the Elizabeth Street neighborhood. I walk that neighborhood every day. My kid lives in that neighborhood. I drive down that neighborhood, and these are my neighbors. And it's hard to, I can't imagine what you must be thinking that we're thinking when we look up here and we ask you to do something, and it's been asked for the last 10 years, and yet all we hear is talk to the building department or talk to the zoning department, and then you walk outside and you look at the homes in your own neighborhood and they're looking like what you just saw on that screen. Imagine if in your neighborhood, next door to you on either side, you had a building twice the size of the original house that was there built onto the backyard. And the person who built that didn't live there. And they put a sign out on the front lawn and it said, rooms $450 per. And 6, 8, 10, 15 people ended up in those rooms. Would you come here, sit down, wait for hours after hours so that we could get a few minutes to talk to you, and then be told that we need to act in a moderated, thoughtful, slow, calm, non-pressured atmosphere? And while you act in your non-pressured, slow, calm atmosphere, the next building goes up, and the next building after that goes up. And the neighborhood that you moved into is no longer the neighborhood that you live in. I don't know what the answer is. None of us wants to put anybody out of a job. None of us wants to shut down the city. None of us wants to say that there's no building that should happen. No one's in favor of that. There are builders on our street. There are craftsmen on our street. There are people who are building onto our homes in responsible ways. That is not a responsible way. And if we can't have a law in a city and a department that can turn this into a responsible building, then what's the use? We might as well just throw the city open, let anyone build wherever they want. You can build an apartment building next to another building. And for the last 10 seconds of my time, I want to applaud the people who are here.
Thank you, Mr. Chethik. Mr. Barker, if you'd step to the podium, and John Snyder. Mr. Snyder, thank you.
Hello, my name is Mark Barker. I live at 439 Park Avenue in the Columbia Heights Neighborhood Association. Dear city officials, 2 years ago the city voted against the historic overlay for my neighborhood, despite the fact that it was clearly both needed and the neighborhood qualified for such an overlay. Indeed, the neighborhood is now certified as a National Historic Neighborhood. Since then, though, I have worked in good faith to come up with an alternative to such an overlay. I have attended multiple public infill meetings over the last couple of years and have multiple correspondence with planning staff. I originally suggested that the city consider a hybrid of H1 and ND1, an H1 light, if you will. The city rejected such as too complicated. As an alternative, I suggested the city simply add as an option to ND1 demolition standards. This was discussed in multiple public hearings with no one disagreeing with it as necessary. Without demolition standards, a redeveloper targeting an area can simply buy old buildings, demolish them, and in the process devalue other surrounding buildings, making it cheaper to acquire them and eventually acquiring enough buildings to upzone and redevelop the area. No ND1 overlay has a chance of preventing such a scenario in a targeted area without demolition standards. The planning staff had the law department review the standards and the legality of demolition standards in the ND1 overlay, and the law department agreed that it was doable, and the staff initially indicated it could be included in the next update of the zoning ordinance. Moreover, such an inclusion would initially not affect any properties, as an ND1 requires a lengthy series of public hearings with property owner notification and a vote by both the Planning Commission and Council. Yet without warning or justification, it has been left out. Nor has anyone suggested any viable alternative to the zoning issues which I have asked to be addressed. This is failure of monumental proportions. Not only has the city failed to act in good faith, it has acted in a negligent, reckless manner that will leave neighborhoods near the downtown vulnerable with no viable options that they can pursue. The city should be ashamed. After waiting 2 years, I'm simply asking for 2 words to be added to the list of options under ND1 standards, demolition standards. Is that really asking too much? Of course not. But time and time, the community is let down. People ask, but haven't we had task forces and hearings? But sadly, when you look at those task forces, rarely is there a substantial number of people that understand the problem and want to solve it on the committees. On the last task force, the Student Housing Task Force, only one resident owner was in the task force. Everyone else was either student landlords who greatly profit from adding cheap additions to houses and converting the home into a rooming house, or UK, which all too often sees the surrounding areas as a place to dump their student housing, alcohol, and fraternity problems. Isn't this kind of like putting the fox in charge of the hen house? And when us mere resident owners dare to attend these hearings, we're all too often quickly dismissed. When I suggested at one of the infill task force hearings that the current policy of not inspecting the underlying structure before adding a second floor onto a home, even a 75-year-old home, was unsafe, I was told by the building code person on the committee that, quote, that wasn't required by the state building code, and if it was necessary, the state would have already added it.
Mr. Barker, your time has expired. If you'd like to leave that with the clerk, the rest of your statement with the clerk, you're welcome to do so. Thank you. Mr. Snyder, if you... All right. Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Mr. Pickett, Kathy Pickett first.
Mayor.
Yes.
Question. Did you relinquish your time to the gentleman that just spoke?
All right. Okay. I didn't understand. I'm sorry.
I just have one paragraph. Wow. 2 years ago, after the city turned down the H1 overlay proposed, I asked the council people who voted against it if they had even bothered to walk through the neighborhood before they voted. Well, Councilman Myers, Councilman McCord, Councilman Lane, Councilman Ellinger, Councilman Beard, Councilman Stinnett, they're still building ugly additions, they're still demolishing homes, and I'm still waiting for an answer. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Kathy Pickett. Ms. Pickett.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, members of council. I urge you to consider the moratorium and doing something about the problems that our neighborhood and the Columbia Heights neighborhood suffers. My husband and I rented on Arcadia Park 16 years ago. We lived there for 4 years, and then we moved to Park Avenue and rented for a couple of years before we bought our house on Forest Park Road. Oddly enough, we moved from Park Avenue to get away from the students. And we had, even though when we moved to Arcadia Park and I felt like we had moved to the suburbs and feared that nobody would ever come visit us anymore, I fell in love with that neighborhood. And even though I guess Elizabeth Street isn't technically a part of that neighborhood or Forest Park Road, I love that neighborhood. We moved there. We love our house. And we're eager to see it be protected and taken care of. We have 3 houses on our street, 229, 231, 233, and now 238, that are owned by the same people who own 20 other pieces of property. 16 of those are in my neighborhood. 229 and 233 have had 1,500 square foot additions added on to 800 square foot dwellings. 238 has a permit to add 1,620 square feet to a 960 square foot structure. These are not single-family dwellings anymore. My husband and I, on our end of the street, are one of 3 owner-occupied homes left. When I came home Friday evening from having dinner with a friend, there were 4 bicycle policemen on bikes in my neighborhood. At midnight, I was sandwiched between them and 4 patrol cars. And I emailed Keith Gaines, who emailed me back at 2:47 to tell me that they had just left my street because it took them that long. It took them 2.5 hours to get the partying on my street under control. I'm all for building. I work in real estate. I know what this does. I want people to be able to add on responsibly. I just want to see us take responsibility for our community. Pretty soon, my little neighborhood is going to be turned into a ghetto, where no owner-occupant or single-family resident is going to want to live, and people like ourselves are not going to want to put their precious little college children in to go to school because it's going to be so deteriorated, and it'll happen quickly. We've seen it happen to other areas, and I just ask us to take responsibility for our city and come up with a plan of what we can do. I'm not saying push the students out. I'm saying make a plan, do something to work together, to come. I'm sorry, my time's up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Pickett. Mr. Pickett is our next speaker, and then Mr. Olszewski.
My name is Hark Pickett. I spoke with you last Thursday. I have to say the wind is sucked out of my sails a little bit by having the moratorium removed from the docket, even more so after hearing some of the comments from the folks from the University Heights area and the other areas that have been battling this issue for a lot longer than we have. As a relative novice to advocating for this issue, I have to say that's incredibly discouraging. That said, I will make my comments as planned. Many of us are here to represent the residents of Elizabeth Street neighborhood and the surrounding area. And, a lot of this is going to be in reference to a moratorium that's not on the docket. Just please substitute that with a speedy solution to this issue. The giant sucking sound that left this room was not any of the residents that live in this area. It was the builders. As I drove down my street on the way home today, I saw work had begun on a house 5 houses down from my own, and I feared that would happen. I feared it because I noticed earlier in the week that lots of brush had been removed. It was cleared out. I feared it because the people that lived there for 32 years recently succumbed to the pressures associated with the rapid deterioration of our neighborhood. They sold their home and they moved away. The sale closed in June of this year. If we lived in a neighborhood that wasn't undergoing such rapid evolution that mine is, I would probably have been excited to learn that a neighbor was putting addition on their home. Excuse me. Additions to single-family homes can obviously be a great way for folks to expand their living space in a manner that fits with the character of their home and the fabric of the neighborhood around them. The revenues gleaned from this construction associated with additions and remodeling is vital to our community, as are the tax dollars gained from capital improvements and associated spending that also add to the licensed financial base to support any number of exciting projects on our path to Destination 2040 and other projects. I'm really excited about where our town is, the opportunities that lie before us. Everyone here has a vested interest in the result of this moratorium. Speedy solution. Everyone. Several people here have spoken or will speak before you and ask you to vote against the moratorium. They're not here anymore. Some of the people are very powerful due to their financial position in this community. Some of these people are employed by very powerful people to lobby for a vote against this resolution. Many of these people have the very best intentions. Many of them feel that this moratorium, as it's written, is too restrictive. I was one of the people that brought that to Councilmember Lawless's attention when I first heard of the moratorium. We're in challenging economic times. Everyone here recognizes that. I think a lot of my colleagues, a lot of my neighbors have spoken to that. I'm running out of time. 8-bedroom additions. We're going to get the Octomom to move in there? No. That's not what's happening. You guys can solve this. Please do it. We're here. We're listening. Ready to be engaged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pickett. Mr. Olszewski, followed by Joanne Filkins. Ms. Filkins, if you'd stand by.
Yes, my name's Steve Olszewski, and I drew this crude little thing here to give you a notion of what I care about and where I live and so forth. Moratorium, quite frankly, I don't care one way or another. You know, I mean, that's in how you determine your own procedures to go forward with this. But I want to comment, I'm at 220 Westwood Court, and I've drawn kind of an overhead map. And to my left, when I'm standing out my front door, to my left there, 222, is one of these fraternity houses. Now, that house, as far as I can tell, has not gotten an addition yet. But when I first moved in there, two things. The person who lived there before was a family, a woman and a single mother and her 2 sons, who moved out because they just couldn't take it anymore with the neighbors. Simple. So I moved in there, that's fine. And as soon as I did, I went over, it was about 10 o'clock at night after moving in, and I introduced myself to my neighbor sitting on the front porch, and there was 4 of them. And I thought, well, you know, for a 2-bedroom house, well, you know, I don't want to judge anybody's lifestyle. And so they said, yeah, nice to meet you, but I just want to say as neighbors, we have a lot of guests. We have a lot of people over. I said, really? That's nice. You have a social life. That's good. I found out soon thereafter what that meant. Across the street from me at 219 is the big vinyl box. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand the proportion. That is a 2-bedroom house, like all the other houses in that R1 neighborhood. And it has a vinyl box on the back of it that has an additional 6 bedrooms, as I understand it. I was in it earlier today, and I want to tell you about that. There's a garden, I've mentioned garden, in the center of the cul-de-sac there. That's a garden that, Val, I think I saw, last time I saw you before just today was you were out there all bent over putting flowers in there and so on like that. And it's been like that for a few years, whatever. Okay. That place is strewn now with beer bottles, beer cans, plastic cups from last weekend. Today's Thursday. Also, our garbage pickup on Monday, there's garbage all over the lawn and the curb, and there's two Herbies out there laying in the street by the curb. There's also another one up by the front door, and there's 3 that are spilling over on the side. I don't know where they get all these. I guess you can pay extra. But yeah, so is the number of Herbies 6 telling me something about the level of activity there? And from Monday, they can't get their stuff pulled back. I mean, I think you're supposed to bring it back in on Monday like everyone else does. And so when I was talking to him today, I said, when I was over there I said, it came up. They seem to be very aware. They said, yeah, we know all our neighbors hate us. And they said it just like that. And I said, well, here's why. I'm trying to be nice. I go, here's why we hate you. Because you're young and strong, you got the potential of your full life ahead of you, you can do anything you want, you got everything going for you, and me, an old geezer like me, I'm stuck with my run-of-the-mill job every day, I got to do the same, I'm not going anywhere, this is it. This is the end of the road for me, literally. This is where I live now, this is my life. I'm stuck with that, I'm not going to have your... And so I resent the fact that you guys can do whatever you want, including trash the neighborhood or anything else. And I pointed out all this stuff, I said, you know, all this litter here, people hate that, you know. And they said, yeah, we try and clean up, but, you know, you can do so much. And I said, no, you're looking at a few beer cans and thinking like, well, you know, a broken bottle or 2 is not that bad. But we're thinking that's the worst trash we've ever seen in our lives.
Mr. Olszewski, your time.
Am I out of
is
time?
expired.
I'm sorry, because they blocked me.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate your cooperation. Ms. Filkins, followed by Val Campbell. All right. We'll let Mr. Olszewski finish.
Thank you so much, Val. I wanted to comment. It's actually a separate comment. Besides the fact that of the trash, and if you could put that back up real quickly, what I've ever done and like to do is drive down Westwood Court and then go around the garden area and park there in front of my house. And it's not very well shown, but in front of my house and in front of the house across from me, there's a curve. The curb goes wrapping around. So safely, you can park 1 car in front of my house, safely. really. And the house across the street the same way. But I can't do that anymore because the street is always parked up now. It never used to be like that. And they park 2 cars there, so even just coming down the road at all and to get to my driveway is not particularly safe. And a lot of times my driveway is blocked. Now I'll mention, when my driveway is blocked, I just flip out. And I pull out my cell phone and go, somebody better get over here and tow this car because I'm trying to get into my own driveway and can't even get into it. Nothing ever happens. I mean, it takes an hour or two. There was a car that was parked in front of my house, but I really do want to park there. Seriously, I do. And it was there for like a week, and I called up and said, we might have an abandoned car here in front of my house. And they said, oh, well, we'll go ahead and put that in the system, and in 5 days, someone will come out and put a notice on it that they have 24 hours to move it. Well, listen, I said I can tell by the license plates it's from far away. If I were coming to school here, this is me. If I were coming to school here, I'd drive up into Lexington, find a nice place to park that was free. I'd go to school, and come Thanksgiving or so, I'd get back in my car and go home for the holiday. And why not, especially if my fraternity brothers live on all the houses around there to tell me, ooh, there's a yellow thing on your car, you better come over and move it within 24 hours. Yeah, it's free parking. That's just all there is to that. So what I want to tell you is, besides the moratorium, I kind of don't care one way or another. I want you to give me back my parking place in front of my house. I do. I want to have the right to park in front of my own house again. I also want to have my garden back. I want to be able to look out and see the flowers, not with beer bottles and beer cans and the big red plastic cups and whatever else. And third, I'd like to be able to run around and play without worrying about broken glass. Now, sometimes I go out there barefoot. That's a bad habit. I guess I should be shot for that. But it actually turns into a safety hazard and danger when you talk about broken glass. And these guys aren't to be blamed. You drink so much, you can only do so much, and you can only expect it to stay so clean. Sorry to run over the time again.
Thank you, Mr. Olszewski. Ms. Filkins, thank you for your cooperation, and Ms. Amatiadis. All right, Mr. Burke, Tom Burke, Linda Worley. All right. Ms. Filkins.
I'm Joanne Filkins. I live also on Westwood Court. I've lived there for 16 years and I own my own home. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our street, it's a one-block dead end with typical lot sizes of 50 by 150 feet. It's a mix of owner-occupied houses and rental property. We've had problems for many years with trash, noise, parking, and traffic related to student rental property. We're part of the Elizabeth Street neighborhood, which was in the news last fall as a location of the couch burnings following UK football games. Now we have at least 2 satellite fraternity houses on our block. If you don't know what a satellite fraternity house is, it's an off-campus house that houses the overflow from an official on-campus fraternity house. We don't know the affiliations of all the student renters on our block, so it's possible there are more fraternity houses than what we know of, but we do know that at least these 2 houses are connected with fraternities. One of these houses, and it's the one that Mr. Olszewski was just talking about across the street from him, was roughly tripled in size this summer by the construction of a 6-bedroom, 2-bath addition on a house that was originally 2 to 3 bedrooms. The backyard was turned into a parking lot. One of my neighbors was told that the developer wants to do 5 more houses like that in our neighborhood. So we're just hoping that something can be done before that happens. We've heard that this fraternity is conducting all of its rush activities on our block. Presumably that's in order to circumvent the UK rules regarding drinking, etc. at parties on campus. The first week of the semester, actually it was partly before the semester even started, they had at least 3 big parties, 2 of which were on nights when most people needed to get up and go to work in the morning. One was a Thursday night and one was a Sunday night. We're not against students. I work at UK myself. Many of us have either worked with students or have been students. We're not against builders or landlords, but we want to see them all act responsibly. Nobody in a residential neighborhood wants to be woken up at 2 a.m. by fraternity parties several times a week. We also don't want to find beer cans, bottles, and cups in our yards where they provide evidence that the partiers have been trespassing on the property of neighboring homes. We don't want to put up with street parking that leaves us no room for our own guests and sometimes even blocks us from our own driveways. We don't want people relieving themselves on our bushes or in plain view on the street. We appeal to you, our elected officials, to protect our neighborhood and to prohibit construction that is inappropriate to a residential area. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Worley. You'll be our last speaker unless anyone else wishes to address the council
I
this
think
evening.
everybody was very happy to hear that comment, the last speaker. I am Linda Worley, and I live in the Seven Parks area, which is a H1 overlay. I recognize that this is a very complex issue where a lot of individual rights clash. You've got the rights of entrepreneurs and homeowners, the rights of landlords, the rights of owner-occupied property. I acknowledge and respect, very much so, the differing aspirations and needs for all of the involved parties. And because of this situation, it seems to me one of the best things we need to do and most reasonable is to step back and ask some basic, tough questions. What is best for Lexington, for the city as a whole? Are blighted areas surrounding UK, and I mean south, east, west, and north, and blighted areas that ooze, it's half a mile, then a mile, and I think in some point it might hit all of the districts. Are these in the city's best interests? How can we encourage, not just discourage, how can we encourage quality investment by homeowners, by landlords? And here's a question only a professor would probably ask. What kind of housing might actually help students learn? Now, that might not be within the council's purview. All right. These are, and unfortunately, they were good questions that have been asked for the 20 years I have now lived and been a faculty member at the University of Kentucky. During 20 years is a long time. In that time, and I just want to give one example, the fate of the North Elizabeth area was talked about, was brought to the council with pictures of the vinyl boxes that were going up on State Street and Transcript. I believe Dave Cooper was here at that. The answers by the council, some of the same people were, unfortunately, please forgive me, Mr. Lane, go to code, and we will work on it. I was at UK meetings where, unfortunately, I heard callous comments like, oh, that area is a goner anyway, and it is now UK's new parking garage. There have been promises and questions and committees for this whole time. And I have to ask, what's being bulldozed tonight, tomorrow? We need a timeout, we need action. And my final comment is I'm really sad and a little embarrassed to go to national conferences, and when they hear Lexington, they go, oh, you're that city that destroys the historic areas. I don't want that anymore. Thank you.
Mr. Sams, do you wish to speak to the council?
Sorry, I missed the list. I would like to comment on 25 on the docket. I know there's some questions to Shaylor Taylor, to your commissioner. You know, she's only been here a short time, and someone who has been there, done that kind of work, could probably shine some light on some of the questions you have if you'd ask. And some of those questions are about the neglect. And it shows we don't just neglect on just certain things. There's other neglect in this city too. But it is a shame that we neglect on the needs and the needs of people's health, protect their health on the jobs that you do. But what I wanted to tell you, in 1996, this government embarked upon temporary services through corporations as labor fill-in on your fill-on everyday services employees that citizens should have that right to compete for them jobs. But it was filled in through temporary services. That corporation doesn't have those rights as a person. Now, if you want to know where the surpluses come from, you got to wonder about why have you neglected? You neglected to give citizens a job and benefits that was not paid out to these positions for 1996 until this date helps you get there to that number, that magic number of 25 million, 24 million, whatever you want to call it. But these things has went on so long, and it's not that it went on blindly. We've came down here and told you about temporary people cutting their thumbs off, cuts to their heads, legs broke. It's neglect. It is total neglect. Now, if we had a firefighter or police officer that had faulty equipment and we knew about it, we'd pull every bit of the equipment and find out what it is. Today's society has changed. We no longer pick up banana peels and apple peelings. That's over with. We have every kind of chemicals out there that is disposed of, and it's prompt put up on these people who gives these vital services. Why are we not concerned about their protection as we are the firefighters and the police officers? I cannot, for the love of life of me, I cannot understand why we neglect a certain group of people. Why haven't we asked and made a motion for the Kentucky University, who wants to be a top research study, to study the health of these men? You know, neglect is a long time for 10 years, but I've been down here 20 years, crying the same tune. It always falls upon deaf ears because y'all's position changes.
Mr. Sams, your time has expired.
Yeah, it did 20 years ago, too.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council? Then that takes us to the end of the agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Have a motion.
That's okay. I just want to tell people, if you want to stay here, I'll talk to you about the plan.
All in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.